living since being thrown out of the Windsor estate. The police have arrested Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. It's an extraordinary revelation and development on this story involving the Epstein files and all the allegations that have been swirling around about Andrew over the many years, from Virginia Giuffre, now sadly deceased, and since then, and certainly what's been contained in the Epstein files as released in the last few weeks. But the police have arrived at Sandringham Estate this morning, where Andrew has made his new home. It's his 66th birthday today. What a birthday present that is. He has been arrested by the police. Of course, the brother of the current king, the second son of our late Queen Elizabeth. This is an extraordinary development. Those of us who've been talking an awful lot about establishment cover-ups and lack of, should we say, interest by the police in what are very, very serious allegations against Andrew. Perhaps pleased that that pressure has finally been put on the police, and they have done the job of actually looking into these issues seriously. Must bear in mind, of course, that the Prince has not been charged with any crime at this point, and he has always denied any wrongdoing in relation to any of the allegations about him. We'll give you more on that. We'll talk to you about that throughout the show, but I'm just being told that the arrest has been on suspicion of misconduct in public office. This, of course, relates to those Epstein file allegations and the documents that, if they are true, would suggest that he had, it is alleged, passed on basically what was confidential government information when he was the UK trade envoy for this country for 10 years to Jeffrey Epstein for Jeffrey Epstein's financial...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good morning. It's, well, it's not Jeremy Kyle, that's for sure. Jez is off for a day. It's Ian Collins here on Talk, the home of common sense. Now, ordinarily, as you will be familiar at this junction, we would have a top-notch Premier League paper reviewer here with us in this chair. Some of the biggest names in commentary darken our doorstep at 6 a.m. They jump out of bed, hot-footed here to talk, and join us for a bit of a powwow on the big stories of the day. Charlie Rowley is our man this morning, except Charlie's not here. Now, he might have gone out. I hope he's OK. In fact, we know he's OK. But he ain't here, so I'm going to need your help on some of this, all right? Voice notes are plenty, please. You know the number, 0344 499 1000. There's the empty chair if you're watching us in vision. That is where Charlie Rowley would normally be. Just imagine the Rowley sitting there, all bouffant and gorgeous at 6 a.m. rather than where he actually is. I don't even want to go there. We're going to talk about a load of things this morning, including... I mean, by the way, you know, we've been inundated over the last few weeks with stories of Iran, rightly so. It's a massive story. We've got some domestic issues to get into here. Everything about Christian identity to Angela Rayner's ambitions. She said, ready for this? Angela Rayner has said Labour is running out of time to change course. I'm going to play you a clip in just a second about what she previously said about, you know, running the party and getting the big job. But today, she says Labour is running out of time to change course. Her strongest criticism of Keir Starmer to date. She's urged the Prime Minister to change direction or face defeat at the ballot box. The former Deputy PM also said Labour's plans to toughen up on immigration rules are un-British. She says it's un-British. Remember, she doesn't want the top job. She's told us this very line more than once. Have a listen and a reminder of her absolute steadfast belief that she doesn't want the top job. Here she is.
Absolutely not. And I don't want to be leader of the Labour Party. I'm very happy and honoured to do the job.
What kind of politician are you? You don't want to be leader of your party?
No, I'm very happy and honoured and to be Deputy Prime Minister of this country. And I've got a lot in my in tray to prove that I can do the job that I'm doing and deliver on the milestones for the people of this country. That's what I'm interested in, Trevor.
You know this is being recorded, don't you? Because actually, that means one day, if you do, somebody's going to play it back to you.
Absolutely. I'll be happy for you to play it back to me. I have no desire to go for the leadership of the Labour Party. My desire is to deliver for the people of this country who have given me opportunities beyond what I could have dreamed of.
Yeah, I smell something in this. There's a little porky there from Big Ange. She's saying, no, I don't want the job at all. Not in any shape or form. But she's wheeling out statements such as this. Labour is running out of time. She says the Labour Party's plans on immigration are un-British. What the hell does she mean by that? 0344 499 1000. You can call, you can voice note on that number. She's clearly after the gig. She knows May the 7th, which is around about like 8-9 weeks away. It's really close. Keir Starmer's going to get an absolute mullering in those elections. They're mayoral elections, elections for Wales, elections for Scotland, God knows how many council elections. He's going to get a hammering. It's a public lashing for the Prime Minister. And who's waiting in the wings? Our Ange. She's there, ready to go. What do you make of that? And her specific comment that Labour's plans to toughen up on immigration are un-British, she says. Thoughts on that? I also want to bring you this. A record now 4 million Brits are claiming personal independence payments as disability handouts double in 7 years. This is worth up to about £10,000 a year. It does not require, can scarcely believe this, it doesn't require a fit note from a doctor. How does that even work? The surge is being driven by a mass spike in claims from teenagers and young adults. Do you believe that every claimant in this respect needs this benefit? And what has gone wrong that claims have doubled? They've not gone up like, you know, normally when you see that figure, somebody goes, oh, they've gone up by 2% in the last 5 years. It's doubled in 7 years. Doubled in 7 years. 4 million Brits are claiming a disability payment in this country. What is wrong with them? We understand it. If you've lost a leg, you've got a severe and serious mental health issue, everybody understands it. People who pay tax, absolutely fine. With money being hypothecated, you didn't expect that word at 8 minutes after 6, hypothecated for those in need. But 4 million of your fellow Brits are now claiming that benefit. 0344 499 1000. What is the specific issue, as you see it, that has led to so many people finding themselves in a position where they feel they have no choice but to go for a disability benefit, and clearly quite a lot are getting approved. 4 million Brits. We brought you that story the other day, didn't we, that doctors really don't turn down anyone who's saying, I've got a mental health issue. Define mental health issue, much like the old bad back issue, nobody can. Elsewhere, Donald Trump has attacked the BBC over its corrupt and fraudulent coverage of the Iran war, he says, and blames Keir Starmer for the decline in the special relationship, saying, we have a tremendous relationship with the UK. It was the longest and oldest. Well, it was the best before Keir came along. Wow. I mean, he's piling it on by the day, as he did the Churchill line, which was quite funny, to be honest, wasn't it? Now he's saying, we used to have a great relationship, and then Starmer showed up and wrecked the whole darn thing. Responses on that as well. We'll continue to bring you updates on meningitis too, because there's a lot to be said about that, what's happening in Kent, and the full updates there. Your comments, you can message 87222, you can message 03444, you can voice note or call 0344 499 1000. Let's have a reminder then of the Winston Churchill line.
You see that man right there? You know who that is?
Churchill.
Winston Churchill. The late, great Winston Churchill. And Barack Hussein Obama did not want his bust in this office. Did you know that? And Barack Hussein Obama sent that bust back to England. They didn't want it. And when I came in, I was asked if I wanted it. I said, absolutely, I want it. And I put it right there, Winston Churchill. And, you know, unfortunately, Keir is not Winston Churchill.
Do you guys...
By the way, is that the bust of Winston Churchill? I thought it was Ryland Clark when I first saw it. Is that really Winston Churchill? It's a very young Churchill. I don't know whether Obama literally sent it back a UPS package to Downing Street. But thankfully, Trump did return it to the Oval Office. And this is what he said about that special relationship with our current Prime Minister.
We have a tremendous long-term relationship with the UK. I mean, people would say it's the best. I don't want to get into that, but we've had, it was the longest, the oldest, should be the best. Always was the best until Keir came along, and now, and I like him. He's a nice man. He says everything beautiful. He's a very nice man with a beautiful family. Everything's perfect, but he doesn't produce.
Trump is the absolute gift that keeps on giving. He can call out our Prime Minister better than any of our own other politicians can. That last line, he doesn't produce. You know, they had a phone call, didn't they, about whether or not they can send extra assistance into the Straits of Hormuz. And he said, Keir, you can make that decision. And Keir's, oh, I can't. I've got to check with some people. No, you haven't, said Mr. Trump. You are literally the Prime Minister. Make a decision. I've just got to check it with the committee. No, you haven't. You are the Prime Minister. And he couldn't get his head around that. He's not the only person to feel quite impotent when it comes to big decisions in that role, but he's certainly the one who's there at the moment. Trump has well and truly called it out. In fact, the Irish Taoiseach sort of came a little bit to Trump's defence during that little meeting in the Oval Office there. But that is the latest. Trump, again, he doubles down. Trump, Starmer is no Winston Churchill, he said, and we did have a good relationship with the UK until Keir came along. He's a nice man, lovely family and all the rest of it, just doesn't produce. Pretty damning stuff, right? 0344 499 1000. We are also going to talk about Christianity and whether Christianity has or is under threat. We're going to be talking shortly to Bishop Kieran Dewar. Now, we've spoken to Kieran before. He's written a letter to King Charles. He feels very strongly about Christian identity in this country being under threat. He says, I write to you neither as a politician or a commentator, but as one of your loyal subjects who, as Bishop of Christ's Church, cannot remain silent while the Christian foundations of this kingdom are steadily dismantled. This is big stuff from a serving bishop. Do you recognise that? Is the Christian identity under threat in this country? We are clearly in a very different place from, you know, a couple of decades back. We have a bit more of a mix-up of faiths in this country from decades back. And Bishop Kieran is making the point that actually this isn't just a slight challenge to Christianity. This feels like to him a deliberate, and we'll speak to him shortly, a deliberate attempt to kind of almost sideline Christianity and remove Christianity as a central part of our identity. And he goes on to talk about the fact that this isn't just a symbolic issue when you have the king who's leader of the defender of the faith and all the rest of it. I think King Charles pluralized that, didn't he, to faiths. But nonetheless, he says this is God's work. This is not just a bit of pomp and ceremony over there at the Abbey when you get coronated. This is a statement under the banner of God himself, and we should take it seriously, but he thinks Christianity is being sidelined. 0344 499 1000. This in from Lee in Market Harbour. He says, why does it make you un-British to not want to be flooded with dangerous illegal migrants? Just another lefty slur. That was Angela Rayner's comments, of course. She said that the latest position of Labour on immigration is un-British, and this is largely a swipe Shabana Mahmood and her new policy of making migrants wait for up to 20 years before you can, you know, officially become resident. I mean, by the way, the Labour policy on immigration is blipping woeful. There's nothing dramatic or controversial about it. No one would go, wow, they're really clamping down over there. They've got the ice boys out in force. None of that going on. To Angela Rayner, this is un-British, she says. And what's interesting about that, of course, is that she hasn't just said this out of nowhere. She said this knowing there are local elections coming up. She said this knowing that Keir Starmer's position is very weak. And she said this knowing that at some point she can slide into those number 10 shoes quite quickly. She's telling this to the left-wing gallery of her party. Robert says Rayner is full of it. She wants to be PM so badly you can smell it. She does indeed. Sean in Gloucester, morning in. Rayner needs to wind her neck in and pay her tax before she starts preaching about anything. I think that's a completely fair point. And this one from Bill in Romsey. Our Ange is just looking for votes for when she's going for the Labour leadership and indirectly having a go at Rachel from accounts to stop any cuts in benefits. If Starmer goes, will Reeves follow? Yes, she will. If the PM goes, the Chancellor goes as well. Let's get a voice note on Rayner. Morning, Wayne.
Morning, Ian. It's Wayne from Erdington in Birmingham, mate. Angela Rayner. It's very un-British. She wants to try walking around the streets of Birmingham. That's very un-British. Have a good show. Nice slot for you, mate. Early burlies. Keep up the good work.
Good man, Wayne. Only knew about this about 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon, so yeah, it is early. Thank you to Wayne on that one on Rayner. More voice notes, 0344 499 1000. Good morning, it is Morning Glory. Ian Collins in for Jezza right here on Talk.
We're here to show our Jewish position. We are against this war, against this aggression, against the massacres, against the genocide committed by Zionism. Zionism doesn't necessarily have to come from the Middle East. It can come from the United States as well. We are Jews. We are completely against this bloodshed, against this murderous massacres that's happening in Iran, in Lebanon, in Gaza. The genocide in Gaza has not been accounted for still. It's continuing the genocide in Gaza without any food and medicine. We are here as Jews. We're going to continue our peaceful struggle.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. Ian Collins in for today. Thanks for all the messages so far. Lots coming in, loads of comment, particularly on Christianity, particularly on Angela Rayner. Liam.
Morning, Ian. Liam in Yorkshire. Yeah, I think whoever's going to be next Labour leader is going to try and swing back as far to the left as possible. Whether it's Big Ange, Mad Ed, Rachel Reeves, Wes Streeting, God, it's painful just saying them names. But I think what happened in Gorton and Denton with them losing out to a Muslim vote and to the far left, going to the Greens, I think it's really going to hurt them, especially after this local elections when they let Starmer take blame for it and then boot him. But I think they're washed up now, mate. I think that pendulum's swinging back to the right in politics, UK politics, and the next party in power, I think, is going to be reform. It doesn't matter what the left try and do. Well, I hope so anyway. Have a good show, mate.
Liam, that's morning, mate, by the way. Cracking stuff from Liam. I love the fact he said it's painful saying the names. It's like somebody daring you to swear in front of a teacher, isn't it? Just reeling them off. absolutely bang on from Liam. This is about taking the party more to the left. They've realised... They had that little... Keir had a sort of tiny flirtation, didn't he, with trying to sort of chase a bit of a reform vote. We are an island of strangers, he said. Didn't mean a word of it, but he said it anyway. That didn't work out well. Now they've realised that some character called Zach Polanski, spoiler alert, he's awful, is on the lurch, but his star is rising. That's enough to spook the old socialists currently in power, and Angela Rayner is sharpening her left-wing quill, ready to sign on the dotted line for the big job. Make no mistake, she's on manoeuvres. She wants the big job, despite saying, I don't want the big job. She's lying. 0344 499 1000. Sadiq Khan is being criticised as well. That's never a bad way to start the day, for being deeply divisive, for taking part in a mass public act of Islamic prayer in the heart of the British capital. This is right outside the National Gallery in Trafalgar Square. The Shadow Justice Secretary says he should not be allowed, this should not be allowed to happen again, while Reform UK Sarah Pochin says that this domineering show of religious authority should not be tolerated. Later in the show, of course, Layla Cunningham is with us. It's Cool Cunningham. If you've got a question for her, you can get in contact with us now. But we will certainly ask her about that. We ask her as a Reform politician and as a Muslim what she makes of Sadiq Khan. And Lord knows how many people. There were the hundreds out there, by the looks of things, in Trafalgar Square having a mass prayer. Nick Timothy, the Shadow Justice Secretary, called it an act of domination. This comes as a bishop has written to King Charles to say that Christian foundations of the United Kingdom are steadily being dismantled. That bishop is Kieran Dewar. He joins us now. Kieran, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ian. Thanks for having me on.
It's
clearly.
Yeah, it's lovely to see you as well again. Nice that you could come on with us. I was in the car coming into work when I read the entirety of your letter that you've written to King Charles. This is heartfelt stuff, not just a kind of little symbolic how you're doing, King, but very serious stuff underpinning what you see as a serious threat to Christianity in this country.
Well, the United Kingdom is in a very fluctuous point of our history where multiculturalism is clearly failing, despite the great multiculturalism experiment begun by Blair in '97. And as a result of that, the Christian underpinnings of our nation, as I said in my letter to His Majesty, are being eroded. And it's not just the rise of other religions that is alarming. It is the rapid rise of modern secularism, and as we've seen now with the likes of Zach Polanski calling for the church to be established, and potentially Keir Starmer making a move in Parliament to, excuse me, to remove the bishops from the House of Lords, which is the disestablishment of the church. We are rapidly moving away from a constitutional monarchy founded on Christian principles to a secularist republic that will completely change the moral fabric of our society and open the door to all manner of unknowns that we as Britons don't want to see happen. And I felt that I've got to a point where when I, over the weekend, heard that key bishops of the Church of England were not going to be present for what is one of the most significant, if not the most significant, votes for the unborn in Parliament this week, we began to mount pressure online, and I just got to a point where enough was enough. And the letter that you've read this morning is what came out of my heart and what I'm feeling for this country. And because of me saying those things, both now and over the last 2 years, I've been called everything under the sun to try and silence my voice.
Which is interesting, because you're a Christian and you're calling for more Christianity in a Christian country that is underpinned by a Christian head of state, and the backdrop is Christianity, and you're getting attacked for that, which is curious in itself. It's a bizarre position for anyone to take against you. You say in this letter to the King that Christianity is being deliberately eroded, not that you see it just going by the wayside and people not caring. You're talking about this as being something that is very much almost a planned move.
It is so. There's no other way, no other word to explain it. This is, in my opinion, absolutely deliberate. We saw the beginnings of this in the Blair-Brown era, and it's now being carried on through the Conservative government and a continuation on a mega scale now under Starmer's. I don't want to call it a regime, but I think we're getting awfully close to feeling like it is a regime at the moment. The way that there is this massive pushback or silencing of Christianity. Whilst that iftar was taking place, just up the road, Christian street preachers are arrested and removed by the police. This is a constitutionally Christian country. Why is it and listen, I have nothing against Muslims and the freedom of every religion in the United Kingdom, but I have serious problems when any other religion is trying to usurp and supplant the nation's religion, and you have socialists like Zach Polanski coming along saying, well, we want to remove the Church of England and remove Christianity as the nation's religion. And I'm afraid Mr. Polanski, who thinks his star is rising, is about to find out exactly how many Christians and people that consider themselves to be Christians in this country disagree with what he intends to do. And hopefully will make sure he never gets anywhere near power.
Yeah, I've no idea, just on that specific point, Kieran, I have absolutely no idea how Zach Polanski's even got a foot in the door of the public conversation. I mean, the idea that this man is some kind of charismatic figure, a sort of Tom Cruise of left-wing thinking, is just nuts. I cannot work it out. It's like some bizarre Hall of Mirrors trick that's being played on us, but we'll see how that does pan out over the course of the coming months. I want to play you this clip, though. Because, of course, last year, you may remember, Donald Trump was over here, had a big state visit, all the pomp and ceremony. It culminated in a press conference in Chequers alongside Keir Starmer, who commented on this very point of whether the UK is a Christian country.
The question to the Prime Minister, if you don't mind, are we still a Christian country?
In terms of a Christian country, I was christened, so that is... my church has been all my life, and we are, that is wired into our informal constitution. Of course, we celebrate many other faiths as well, and I'm really proud that we're able to do so as a country.
I mean, there it is, Kieran. I mean, that's as woeful as it gets. He almost, he stumbled and mumbled over, of course we're a Christian country. I mean, he's quite bad at being a Prime Minister. A bloke that's a lawyer has been making powerful cases in front of juries at the Old Bailey and the like for years. He's terrible at talking and terrible at sounding as if he means anything that he actually says. And even there, he had to caveat it. Oh, yeah, we're a Christian country, but we've got lots of other faiths as well. Don't panic, anybody.
Well, the problem is this. Keir Starmer has spent most of his adult life avowing that he's an atheist. He doesn't believe in God. So how you can then turn around in front of the President of the United States, who has supported immensely the Christian agenda in North America, and say, oh, yes, we're a Christian country. I was christened. That's been my church all my life. Well, I've eaten McDonald's. That doesn't make me a chicken nugget. This is an absolutely ludicrous thing. Christianity is not something that happens because you're christened as an infant.
Yeah.
And for a man that says that he is a Christian in that statement there, the actions he's taken as Prime Minister that are an affront to the Christian faith and to the Christian church in this country leave an awful lot to be desired of him as a self-confessed Christian. So to me, that speech was living proof of the old epitome. You can tell when a politician's lying, their lips are moving.
Indeed. You said in your letter to the King, you said, may I be so bold to observe that your coronation oath was not a poetic formality. It was a solemn vow made before Almighty God to maintain and preserve the Protestant reform religion established by law. You're making the point there, of course, that this isn't about symbolism. This is much bigger than that, and it seems to have been forgotten, well, by everybody from Keir Starmer right up to the King, you're sensing.
Well, for 500 years almost, we must not forget that the church and the crown go hand in hand. You cannot have one without the other, since the Reformation with Henry VIII. And before that, the Anglican Church existed in this country for nearly 1,000 years. This is not a moment of just words for the sake of saying words. Our king stood in front of a holy altar surrounded by clergymen with the world watching and made a solemn oath to defend and protect and to stand up for the Christian religion in this country, the Reformed faith that we talk about. in defense of the Church of England. And I have to say, as much as just before he became king, I had a conversation with the then Prince Charles about the future of the church in the United Kingdom, I do not see our king interjecting Christian messages into messages he sends to the Islamic community, the Hindu community, the Sikh community, and other religious communities, both here and in the Commonwealth. And yet, ever since he's become king, somehow a mention of Islam or other faiths is brought into every Christian address. That is not acceptable. You are not defender of faiths as much as you might have wanted to be, Your Majesty. You are the defender of the faith, and your coronation oath is lying, in my opinion, in tatters on the ground at the moment, because you are doing very little to uphold a vow you swore before men and before God.
You can't imagine one of the Ayatollahs in Iran giving a kind of powerful Islamist speech and then sticking on the end, oh, by the way, we love the Christians, up the Jesus. You can't imagine that being said over there in the Middle East at any point. And it rather brings us to this other issue as well, Kieran. Nick Timothy, who's the Shadow Justice Secretary, I think you'll be aware of this, commented on this. There was a kind of mass ritual prayer yesterday in Trafalgar Square. I think it was to commemorate the end of fasting. Sadiq Khan, as you would expect, never misses a photo opportunity, pitched up in the square. Dozens, if not hundreds of people, well, it looks like hundreds of people, you can see it on your screens there, all on the ground, kneeling and praying to their God. Nick Timothy makes this point. He says, I'm not suggesting everyone at Trafalgar Square last night is an Islamist, but the domination of public place is straight from the Islamist playbook. He says, and these are his words that seems to have divided the room, that he said the decree that declares there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger is, when called in a public place, a declaration of domination. And naturally, the left-wing massive in particular, Kieran, have lost their mind over this. Socialists were discombobulating last night at the mere idea that Nick Timothy could make this point. It's a public declaration of domination. What do you say?
He has the right, under our laws, to say whatever he feels. Religion should not be free from criticism, mine included. You don't see Christians making all manner of fuss when and threatening to blow people up and goodness knows what, when people draw images of Christ that aren't exactly how we think it should be, or contravene Scripture when it talks about thou shalt not make any graven images. And whereas I might not agree fully with the sentiment, I have to say, when you look at the number of places all across the United Kingdom where these mass public prayers are being enacted, and most unlawful, we mustn't forget that. Most of these pouring out onto the street are in contravention of our laws for unlawful gatherings, and nothing is done about it. I was once at the Hilton on Park Lane. I was invited to have dinner there with a wonderful gentleman from America, which was a real blessing for me to be in such august surroundings and august company for the dinner. I couldn't get out of the hotel car park at the end of the evening because the streets around that hotel were blocked off by Muslims praying in the street, despite the fact that there's a mosque just a few yards away from the back of the hotel. That, when you look at it from that perspective, then yes, Mr. Timothy does have a valid point. Is it an act of mass domination? Is it an act of attempting to subjugate the local community and the surrounding areas? We as Christians, when we have mass prayer gatherings, they are organized, they are structured, they are in conjunction with the police and permitted to take place. I'm not saying the one in Trafalgar Square wasn't, but we have hundreds around the country taking place every week where streets and roads are blocked off without permission to do so. And the way in which other religions are treated is not comparable with the favoritism that is being shown to acts of Islamic aggression, as many people see. And I have to be honest, I actually see it that way as well.
Just two final points. First one, has the King replied yet to your letter?
I would imagine His Majesty's staff would have only received it this morning.
Okay.
So I haven't had a reply yet because I posted it yesterday just before I placed it on social media.
Okay. I hope he's got a pen ready to reply. He gets very agitated if he doesn't have the right pen, of course. So,
well, I'm blessed because His Majesty and I, we share the same pen. manufactured, but
not literally the same pen. You don't post it off to him for a reply. That would be something, wouldn't it?
The same manufacturer, mine doesn't leak.
Indeed. And the final point on this, Kieran, in terms of getting our Christian identity back, what needs to happen?
Well, we need leaders in this country that are more concerned with preaching the gospel than being concerned in gossip and goodness knows what, and actually push the agenda of the church. And I use that term very loosely because I don't mean it in a political way, but that start removing themselves from preaching woke politics and go back to preaching the gospel. It would be wonderful to see our churches full every Sunday, to see pulpits ringing.
To, get a bit more of a campaign going on that front. Listen, Kieran, it's always good to see you. Thank you for joining us this morning. He's Bishop Kieran Dewar. He's written that letter to that, and our leaders are doing nothing much to address it. Other issues up and running here this morning. Angela Rayner, she wants the top job. She's out barking her head off to anyone who cares to listen about immigration and goodness knows what else. And this, a record 4 million Brits are now claiming personal independence disability allowances. Man alive, it's doubled in 7 years. A lot of comment on that. Here's Dougie.
Morning, Ian. Dougie from Bognor here. It's hardly a surprise that there's a problem with young people and being on benefits all the time. They're bombarded with global warming. They don't know if they're Arthur or Martha because of all this gender fluidity nonsense that they get encouraged with at school. It really is not a surprise that there's a problem. There's no discipline with them. And so they just think, oh, well, I can get benefit. What the heck? No pride, no nothing. And Angela Rayner, pay your taxes. Cheers, mate. Bye.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk. Oh.
And good morning, Ian Collins in for Jezza for this Wednesday morning. It's coming up on 20 to 7. Loads to get through. We're talking Angela Rayner. We're talking disability payments doubling. We're talking the lack of Christianity in this country. And, of course, we're talking Trump yet again turning on Starmer. This one from Damon in Wigan, who says it doesn't matter who's in charge for Labour because it will always be on the left. All they want to do is destroy the United Kingdom. Labour should never be in power ever again, but the damage in Britain will be so extreme it will take years to put right, and we may be a Muslim country by that time. Well, who knows what's going to happen? Maybe our next Prime Minister will be Angela Rayner. Morning, Pete.
Good morning, Jezza. Looking quite a lot younger this morning, aren't you? Oh, it's you, Ian. Oh, well, yeah. Old Angela Rayner, also known as Captain Caveman. You know, right, that's another one that loves. You can see that she's telling the lies when she's sitting there saying she don't want to be Prime Minister. They all want to be Prime Minister. And as all of a sudden she's changed her tune over the immigration issue, well. Desperation.
It's so funny, isn't it? It's brilliant. I love the first comment, Pete, as well. Thank you. Probably about 30 years younger, if the truth be known, ish. It's true. Every politician wants to be the Prime Minister. I mean, there's very few of them that are happy. You do meet one or two that are happy for a backbench life, and they want to be, industrious and decent constituency MPs. There's about 6 of those in the whole House. And good luck to them, by the way. But most of them, of course they want the top job. It's quite extraordinary, isn't it? The calibre and the woeful inadequacy of some of the people that believe they could do the top job. I mean, Angela Rayner as our Prime Minister. And this isn't... I love her backstory. I love the fact that she's a working-class girl, had, not the easiest of early starts to her life. A few challenges. I think it's brilliant that she's ended up in the House of Commons when she was giving Boris Johnson jip at PMQs, all that stuff. And mate, hats off to a working class person who got there. But is she Prime Minister material? You can't dine out on just being gobby and northern and think that's going to get you the big job, because it won't. She's just not very good. There's the problem. David is in Gloucestershire on this point. I think David might... Are you a fanboy of Angela Rayner, David, just out of interest?
Funnily enough, no.
Oh, what a surprise. What a surprise. What have you got for us?
Well, I mean, you keep saying Angela Rayner, she says it's un-British about the immigration policy.
Yeah, it's such a bizarre thing to say. It doesn't mean anything.
Well, I'll tell you what's un-British about the immigration policy from Labour is the fact that it's all lies. I could use another word starting with a lot of other experiences before, because they've got no intention of stopping anybody coming into this country. And I've got no problem with immigrants. If you want to come to this country, work, play the system, be honest, do whatever's required. But the ones that we've got coming in now, we are blatantly... They say that the economy's on its knees, which it is, or even below that, and yet we keep importing unemployed, we import rubbish, we import criminals, and yet there's no way of kicking them out. I mean, look at some of the crimes some of these characters commit.
It's not even immigration, is it? If you think about it, it's kind of like a break-in. It's not, when you think of immigration, you and I have always lived in a UK that has an amount of immigration. Nobody blinked. Nobody cared about that. My doctor was Indian. My teacher was from Pakistan. The bloke that cut my hair was from Jordan. We've all had that experience. No one blinked. No one was bothered. People working hard from different backgrounds. Their journeys change. Their life alters. They move to another country. Fine. What is happening now is not that, right? It's something very, very different.
My best mate at school was a Chinese was a Chinese lad, and this was 50 years ago, and they ran the local Chinese and fish and chip shop at the bottom end of town, and they were very, very successful at it, and that was the way it was. But not the ones we're importing now. What have we had? Everything. Murders, rapes, you name it, they brought it here.
Do you know what? I'm going to say what I always say on this, David, is that when it comes to those channel crossings, and you have on a bad week 1,000 23-year-old men coming along, we don't know who they are, we don't know where they came from, we don't know their names, their backstory, we know absolutely nada about these people. I'm prepared to believe that most of those people are not criminals. Here's the problem: I don't know which ones are. And neither does the government. We're being asked to play Russian roulette on a daily basis in the English Channel. And no leader so far. Right now it's Starmer's gig. But prior to him, no leader, no Home Secretary has done anything about it. And don't you think, when we're at war with Iran, now might be the very time you'd put the Channel in special measures and make sure that anyone who arrived by boat, particularly since we know that a huge contingent on those boats are Iranian, you might go, perhaps we should detain these people and not stick them in the Four Seasons. But that's what we're up against. Listen, David, we've got to move. Thank you very much indeed for that great call from David on Angela Rayner and more. Mike is in Harlow. What do you got for us, Mike? Good afternoon, or good morning.
Hello, mate. Yeah, I was just saying your lady there, who's in charge of the Green Party.
Yeah.
Is he an actual MP?
No. That's a funny...
So what? That's a say to me. Why do you give him so much cover then?
Well, because the Green Party, much like Reform, when people do, some people go, why do you give Reform so much coverage when they've only got, half a dozen or so MPs? Because polling suggests that the political landscape is about to change, and we'll see almost a kind of Green Party versus Reform UK Party becoming the prominent headlines at the next election, Mike.
I'll tell you the next thing I was going to mention. In the 1960s and 70s, I and my family were living in the Bethnal Green, which is now Tower Hamlets. And when we moved there, it was a lovely place to live.
Yeah, the craze, everything.
Years on, it's been taken over by you-know-who, and it's like a council chip in Taiwan. It's an absolute dump. And my parents died a couple of years ago, and I'm so pleased that they was dead, because I was so sick of these people. Like, everywhere you went, they was harassing my mum and dad.
Wow.
And then we was lucky. I had people who could sort things out for me, because I lived and I knew a lot of these people.
Yeah.
But you go there, it's complete. My mum used to say to me, do you know what? I said, well, what's that, Mum? I said, there's a guy downstairs collecting all your voting papers off their people and taking them back to where they take them and filling them in.
Blimey.
It's been going on since the 70s.
Listen, I lived just around the corner from where I lived in Bow, just off Old Ford Road. You will know it well. And similar, because when I lived there, I thought it's interesting. I didn't really get any hassle from anybody. That wasn't the point. But I did live in a parallel borough alongside, very nice people. Everything was fine in that respect. But I didn't recognise it. And it was very much, there's one group of people living completely separate to another group. I think it's the largest Bangladeshi community outside of Bangladesh is in Tower Hamlets. I think that's a correct fact. And whatever anybody thinks about that, in terms of social cohesion, there was no social cohesion. That's the point. There were lots of people from different backgrounds. No one was mixed up together. None. 0344 499 1000. Mike, thank you very much indeed for that. Back to that issue of Christianity. That's been a big one this morning. We spoke earlier to
do their job. Anyway, good luck all.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk
It is Talk. Yeah, good morning. Ian Collins in for Jezza for this Wednesday morning. There is so much going on. It's interesting to have a news agenda that has moved slightly away from Iran. Don't get me wrong, we're right across that story. All the breaking news, Donald Trump with some new lines from yesterday. We'll bring you all of that detail, but there's loads of other stuff, including Angela Rayner. You know, she's on manoeuvres yet again. She wants the big job. Morning, Steve.
Morning, Ian. Steve from Basildon. So we think that Keir Starmer's destroyed the special relationship between America and England or the UK. Imagine if it was Angela Rayner who was the Prime Minister. She'd be up on the world stage chanting that Trump is scum, Trump is scum, Trump is scum. That woman is an absolute liability wherever she goes to. The only thing I really understand or really remember her for is her comments around there's only one rule for this Tory party, and that's one rule for them and one rule for everybody else, which is actually two rules. And to be fair, those two rules or that kind of ruling is something that she actually applies to herself. There's one rule for her and there's one rule for everyone else. Absolute liability, that woman. Cheers.
It's absolute liability. It's as simple as that. You're right, that was two rules, not one rule. This is straight from the Diane Abbott School of Accounting, I sense. And Simon on that point says, would it be possible to ask Angela if it's British to avoid paying taxes or stamp duty? It's a fair point. It would be worth having Angela Rayner as our Prime Minister for about half an hour just to see the meeting at the Oval Office. I mean, if you thought the moment with Zelensky, remember when they gave him an absolute pasting? You'd need Vince McMahon in there, wouldn't you, over there, just presiding over the thing. Forget J.D. Vance, bring Vince in. Here's Angela. Morning, Mr. President. Yeah. Just want to say, Ange, you're terrible. This will be Mary in Hemel Hempstead. Mary, what have you got for us? Good afternoon, or good morning to you, I should say. Second time.
Yes, did you see the... I can't believe it. The horrific scenes of those mass prayers going on in...
Yeah, I mean, this has really fired up a lot of people. Mass prayers for the end of Ramadan. I think that's what the marking was. Sadiq Khan, he's the Mayor of London. He joined the prayers as well. I'm tempted to say there were hundreds of people there kneeling down, and it's been called by... Some people say, well, it's just harmless people having a prayer for 10 minutes. Others have said, Mary, that it's an act of domination. What do you say?
I mean, how many times have we heard of a single Christian preacher standing quietly? We have one in Hemel Hempstead who goes there regularly, and he just stands there quietly and he's reading passages from the Bible. But he hasn't been arrested, but you hear of people being doing this, being told to move on.
Well, there was an issue. In fact, there was a moment in Whitechapel in East London. You remember this a couple of weeks ago, Mary, when a police officer, she was brilliant. She actually stood in, there was a chap reading the Bible, and a fella came up and, he was like, what are you doing here? This is a Muslim area. And the copper said, well, if you don't want to listen to the preacher, go away. It's as simple as that.
She's probably lost her job since.
I was going to say, she's probably been suspended.
Can you imagine that frump going into the White House?
Yeah.
I mean, well, they were elegantly dressed or sort of thing, most of the staff and whatever, and smart. Her turning up in her, what do you call them, Dr. Martens, and clomping up the corridors with her dress.
Loves a Doc Martin, does our Ange?
Oh, God. Doesn't bear thinking about, does it?
I think the problem is with the left wing is they run away with the sort of veneer of, Angela Rayner, working class girl, gritty, northern accent, what's not to like? Well, what's not to like is that she's not actually very good. That's the problem. True, and I think that's probably one of the central criteria for becoming the Prime Minister.
But the sad thing is that with this lot, mind you, the other lobbyists, they're so blatant about their corruption. They just don't care. They have this attitude.
Well, they don't care because they don't think they've done anything wrong, because they dine out on this. Well, we're socialists, so if we do something wrong, that's a kind of different meaning to it. There's different... if a Tory does something wrong, that's an act of venality or evilness or criminality. But if we do something wrong, it's either an honest error or there was nothing to see here. And they genuinely believe that. The stamp duty debacle is a good example. Keir walking around with about 28 grand's worth worth of suit on, courtesy of Lord Ali, is another great example. Rachel Reeves going to see Taylor Swift about 88 times in one gig is another example. They don't care.
I don't know. I just feel that they're so blatant about it that...
Because they don't think they've done anything wrong, because they're the chosen people. That's the problem, Mary.
But surely they must be in contact with what public opinion is. They must watch television, read newspapers. I just don't understand how they're so...
Because they are literally, and I honestly believe this, and there'll be some on the left that might have accidentally turned this on this morning, thinking, you know, well, that's not true. You know, these are decent people. There is an underpinning malaise, almost a disease in socialism, where you believe you are kind of almost ecclesiastically hardwired to be in the right. Everything about what you do is right, and if you get something wrong, it was for the right reasons.
Well, I don't know why some journalists keep on saying, and I mean, even Trump said it the other day, that Starmer is a nice person, or a nice man, or something like that.
Yeah.
Because he is corrupt, he's sleazy, he's a liar, and quite frankly, he's cruel.
He speaks well of you, though, Mary.
Oh, I'm sure.
Listen, great call. Have a great day, Mary in Hemel Hempstead. Thank you very much indeed. On Angela Rayner. Here's Dan.
Morning, Ian. It's Dan from Kent. So the tax dodger, Arrange, wants the keys to number 10. Can you imagine the colour of the wallpaper if she did move in, just judging by her dress sense? It's a frightening thought to think that someone could be making decisions for this country. Orange, yeah. But then I look to my left and I think, wow, the choices. Mad Ed Miliband, a man that wants to bring us back to the Stone Age. So if those two choices, it's like asking me what limb I want cutting off. So I'll go with my right arm, and through gritted teeth, Orange.
It's a very good point. If she got because she would hate all that kind of ornate Downing Street, the history, the lovely statues, and you can imagine her going in there. I've got my mate Terry from Trafford. Terry, bring your graffiti can with you, love. We're going to do this place up. You can almost see it. Come on, spray it, man, spray it. She'd love a bit of that, wouldn't she? Don't want all this Victorian nonsense. Come on, Terry, spray more, my man. They would love all of that. Just changing the face of democracy. Angela Rayner, more comments on that. You can voice note as well. 0344 499 1000. You can leave a message 87222. You can call us as well. We're going to take the news headlines at 7 o'clock. Back with more of your comment coming up in just a couple of moments. Great guests as well, right here at the home of Common Sense on Talk.
Fancy returning to the front line as Foreign Secretary?
I am going to return. I am going to return. To the people from whence I came.
Hello, I'm Peter Mandelson, and I'm proud to serve as His Majesty's British Ambassador to the United States of America.
I feel a tremendous sense, a profound sense of sympathy for those people, those women who suffered as a result of his behaviour and his illegal criminal activities. And secondly, I regret very, very deeply indeed carrying on that association with him for far longer than I should have done.
The Ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret for his association with him. He's right to do so. I have confidence in him, and he's playing an important role in the UK-US relationship.
Mandy's out 4 decades and 3 scandals, or 3 that we know about. Guess what? Number 10 knew all about it. They knew that he lived in Jeffrey Epstein's flat
Mandelson resigned from the Labour Party late last night over the allegations of $75,000 set of payments to him from Epstein while he was business secretary, $10,000 to his now husband, a photo of him in his pants. This isn't just bad form. There are strong arguments here for him to be facing investigation over misconduct in public office.
I knew of his association with Epstein, but had I known then what I know now, I'd have never appointed him.
Breaking news that Lord Mandelson, Peter Mandelson, has now been arrested. So Mandy and Andy have now both had their collars felt. This is the establishment, the British establishment on trial. Came to us around about 5 o'clock when we learned that we saw footage of Peter Mandelson being led out of his London home in very exclusive Regent's Park by 3 coppers.
Now we have all these allegations, we have all the documentation related to those allegations, which Downing Street is being forced to put out. The first tranche of it will be early next month.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good morning. It's a Wednesday. It's the 18th of March. It's Ian Collins in for Jezza. He's off for today. And man alive, is there... Busy doesn't even begin to cover it. We're absolutely rammed to the gills at this end, and thank goodness for the gift that keeps on giving, Angela Rayner. She's warning that Labour are running out of time to change course. Now, when you've only been in half an hour, why would you be talking in that language? You need to change course. They've been there 18 months. They should be. A new government, especially one that's been out of action for 14 years, should be riding on the crest of a wave. It was dismal from day one. Angela Rayner clearly wants the big job. There's no doubt about that. She's on manoeuvres. She's warning they're running out of time. She's suggesting that Labour's plans on immigration are un-British. I mean, this is nut job territory with bells on. Let's get your comments on this. Morning, Sean.
Morning, Ian. Sean in Leicester. Angela Rayner, give me strength. She's not working class. She was working class when she was younger. She's had her nose in a trough for years. She's not working class anymore. I was working class when I grew up as a kid. I've done all right for myself. I don't class myself as working class now. Not that there's anything wrong with it. And I don't know why people keep saying that she is. She was. She's not now. She's milking it for whatever she can get. Anyway, great show, buddy.
Nice one, Sean. Totally share that. Exactly that comment about being working class. That was my background as well. I struggle to seriously say that, yeah, I'm a working class lad from, well, the various places. Scunthorpe, Ashford, Bromley, Bow, you name it, all those. It doesn't wash, and it shouldn't wash with Angela Rayner either. But she's kind of dined out on that, and the rest of the sort of big fan base of Rayner, they love all of that, as if that in itself makes her fit for the job, because she was from a working class background. 0344 499 1000. Jenny says, Angela Rayner lived in a Grace and Favour apartment in Admiralty House in Whitehall. She spent £7,000 on 2 beds for it at taxpayers' expense. What kind of bed do you get for £7,000? I mean, see, how big is your bed for £7,000? I know you can get a super king size, but that's like football pitch territory, isn't it? Maybe that's the idea. Oh. 0344 499 1000. Lots to get through. Let's get a word with Nigel Evans, former Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons and a voice of common sense himself. Morning, Nigel.
Morning, Ian. Great show. How are you?
Listen, you must know Angela Rayner a little bit because, you know, you've been in the Commons together for many years. Did your paths cross very much?
Yeah, and any of your viewers who think that she is thick are underestimating her. She's not. Look at the position that she got to. And of course, all the newspapers are full of the latest attempt for her to take over from Keir Starmer. Everybody knows that Keir is toast, apart from Keir, of course. And so what we had yesterday was a speech which was a thinly veiled attempt at basically a job application. And we know that there's no vacancy yet, that the vacancy is likely to occur shortly after the May elections. These are the elections which Keir himself tried to stop in many parts of England, but then had to back down when he got legal advice. For the first time, he actually forgot to ask for the legal advice on this one. And when the legal advice came through, he was told firmly that they were likely to lose a court challenge. And so these elections will take place. Now, if they do as badly as everybody thinks, then Keir ain't going to survive a single second much longer after May the 7th. And so Angela Rayner gave her job application last night saying, basically, we've got to change direction. The problem for Keir, of course, is that he promised change, and there can be change for the worse, and that's what people have had. So he has provided change, but it's not been change that people rather like. The honeymoon normally, as you said earlier on, lasts quite a time when a government takes over from an unpopular administration. Yet it seemed to me that Keir Starmer turned on the electorate as they were walking down the aisle together, even before they'd exchanged vows. And so he is now the most unpopular Prime Minister that there's ever been. And so let's go back to Angela Rayner for a second. Don't forget, Ian, whilst a lot of people in Britain are struggling, the alarm clock Britain that we all care about, the people who get up in the mornings early doing jobs that they don't particularly like in order to put food on their tables. Angela Rayner, meanwhile, on almost £100,000 a year as a member of Parliament, is now also being signed up by some agency whereby she will give speeches. Between that and her memoirs, which she's writing, she's likely to be earning another £100,000 this year.
Easy.
So £200,000. This is a person who has now empathy with ordinary people throughout the country. Somebody, and I got to say, I got to add this thing back again. If she is applying for this job to take over from Keir Starmer, she still has this little problem about, did she correctly not pay the right tax on that property that she got in Britain? I'm just scratching my head. How many civil servants does it take in HMRC to actually work out whether she does owe that money or not? And we're talking about £14,000 here. We're not talking about small fry. She resigned 7 months ago. So it's 7 months HMRC have had an opportunity to look at her affairs and to come up whether she owes that money. And of course, if she does owe the money, it may well be a fine on top of that, Ian.
Of course. It's interesting because she was also, in addition to her many hats she was the housing minister too. Now, you know how government departments work, Nigel. You would have access to God knows how many freebie lawyers and advice in the job. If you're literally the housing minister and you can't find out the correct rate of stamp duty, then there's something really wrong with the way the cogwheels of government work. So she would have had that advice. It wouldn't have taken long to find out what the correct number was, and it wouldn't take long, you'd imagine, Nigel, for HMRC to come back and conclusively tell us what the heck's going on.
Yeah, that's why I'm scratching my head. I understand that the number of civil servants are burgeoning, the numbers, absolutely burgeoning since this government took over. And so I would have thought that it wasn't beyond the wit of one of them to sit down behind a desk and within a couple of days, as you say, it's her old department. We're in charge of it. She should have known the rules, quite frankly. And I bet now she rues the day that she didn't just sign that cheque for 40 grand on the house that she was buying. But no, anyway, she is obsessed with housing, and there's only one house she's now obsessed with, and that's number 10 Downing Street.
Absolutely.
And that's where her attention is now heading. And so basically the gloves are off, and the race, to mix my analogies, has already begun to who is going to take over from Keir Starmer. He'll be reading the papers this morning and looking at this speech that she gave to the left wing of the Labour Party. There's definitely a pivoting to the left.
Absolutely.
This is what's going to happen. So whilst I have got no time for Keir Starmer whatsoever, yes, I believe that he has lied. But I also believe that whoever takes over from him could even be worse. I mean, I've just listened to some of your callers, and not one of them really has got any time for her. But as I said, don't underestimate her. People used to underestimate John Prescott. He may have sounded a bit thick, but my goodness me, he was intelligent enough to get to almost the very top, and he stayed there for a long period of time.
I would just add to that though, Nigel, because you're right, and I have admired Angela Rayner's backstory. That, you know, she was a young mother at about 16 or something like that. She came from a working class background. Fast forward, you know, a number of years, and there she was in opposition, taking on Boris Johnson at the dispatch box. I loved that snapshot, that moment of someone's journey. It showed that you can do anything you like in this country and you can get to the top tier. However, the bit that I might disagree with you on is that I'm not sure she's not thick. Absolutely not thick. John Prescott wasn't thick either. But I don't know whether she's clever enough to be the Prime Minister, because that's a whole different ballgame, right?
No, but that's absolutely right, because one can look at Keir Starmer and say that he was clever enough to get to the top job, and even Gordon Brown was clever enough to get the top job off Tony Blair. But when he got the keys to number 10, what did he do with it? And if you remember, he sold our gold reserves at knockdown prices, cost billions to the Exchequer. So the reality is, and one would have thought that even with Keir Starmer, after years of waiting to get to number 10 when he got there, what has he done with it? He's thrown away the opportunity to really change Britain for the better. One simple thing, Ian, is that we are now paying some of the highest energy prices anywhere in the world. Yep. This was before the Iran war. We are sitting on massive reserves, and yet Keir Starmer will not drill, baby, drill. How absurd is that? We could literally be drilling our own oil, instead of which we're importing it from countries like Norway, and it's costing British households massive sums of money now.
In terms of where the Labour Party go, it seems obvious now they are going to pivot to the left. And of course the whole spectrum of politics has changed, Nigel. The two-party system is either at best very badly wounded. In its worst scenario, it's out the window for good, because we have Reform, of course, on the right, and we have the Greens. By the way, I can explain and understand the Reform story. I can't understand the Green story, particularly Zach Balansky. But it does seem to have sufficiently spooked the Labour Party to pivot in that direction.
Yeah, but the problem for the Labour Party, and it's a unique problem, because you're quite right. In the past, we've had two-party politics. We've now got roughly five-party politics, if you include the Scots and Plaid Cymru in Wales. And the problem for them is that if they pivot to the left, in a lot of working-class Labour traditional seats, a lot of people have gone to Reform. They see Reform as the future. Well, that's pivoting to the right, and you can't pivot in both directions at the same time. John Major famously said, people trying to ride two horses tend to fall off both of them. So it's a real dilemma for the Labour Party where they go. Gorton and Denton by-election has absolutely spooked them. They went from a very comfortable first position to third position behind both the Greens and Reform. And so it's going to be a real problem for Keir Starmer to work out what's going to happen. And of course, these May elections that are coming up are much bigger than just local authorities, because you've got the Scottish Parliament, you've got the Welsh Senedd as well, and so these results are going to be vitally important. Just to take Wales, which you can tell from my accent I know a little bit more about than Scotland, this is the traditional homeland of the Labour Party, and all the predictions are that they're going to do very badly indeed in working class seats that have traditionally been Labour for over 100 years.
Do you think, I mean, the eyes seem to be on Reform on this one. Can they take it?
There's a chance, but of course we've got a form of proportional representation that takes place both in Scotland and Wales. But my own view is that, listen, Zach Balansky, I don't understand the phenomenon either. There's a lot of people out there who seem to be mesmerised by him. Now, of course, in a former life, he was a bit of a hypnotist, and it may be that he is playing his tricks out on the British public. Who knows? But the fact is that the Greens are a party of the left. They've got some bonkers policies as far as energy is concerned. It is basically going back to caveland if you go with the Green Party. But the problem in Wales, of course, is the nationalists, and it is the nationalists that might do rather well. There again, another left-wing party. So the problem for Keir in Wales is that they're going to be absolutely split again and again and again. As far as the right are concerned, you've got Reform and the Conservatives. Now, the Conservatives have not done traditionally brilliantly well in Wales, but they have, as far as the number of votes are concerned, traditionally been the second party there. And it's how the votes fall, but in a proportional representation scheme, Ian, it's a bit more difficult for somebody to win outright. It's a bit like the local election we just had in France, where there's not really been a clear winner simply because of the PR system, and they have a second round of elections.
Indeed, and that kind of old mantra that elections are only ever won from the centre does seem to be somewhat compromised at the moment. We'll wait and see. I cannot wait for May 7th. I mean, I'm genuinely, as a political anorak, as well as doing this for a living, I'm absolutely... I don't think I'm going to sleep between now and then, Nigel.
Politics is boring.
Exactly. There's enough in the calendar to keep us going forever. Just a word, Nigel, if you would, on this. A record 4 million Brits are now claiming personal independent payments, so we have disability benefits doubling in 7 years. Now, everyone understands if someone's got an issue, physical, psychological, whatever it is, most honest taxpayers want to assist those most in need. We do, however, scratch our heads a bit and say 4 million people doubling over 7 years. What is wrong with everybody?
Yeah, 4 million is a massive figure, but even worse, it's gone up 250,000 in 1 year. That's another 250,000 almost who've gone on to the PIP scheme, which is up to about £10,000 a year. And you don't have to have a fit note from your doctor to be claiming it either, which has got to be even more worrying. And then the second worrying thing is they're tending to be younger people. So the question mark is, why is it that so many people in the United Kingdom are way more sick this year than they were last year? And it's alarm clock Britain are the people who are picking up the bill. This is an enormous amount of money that the British taxpayer are now having to find to pay for people who are doing absolutely nothing. They're not working, they're not in education, and it's a heavy burden for the British taxpayer to carry. And it's about time they got to grips with it. I know Stephen Timms, the Minister, is looking at this currently, but it's about time we saw some action. Otherwise, the figure's just going to go up again and again and again.
Absolutely. Always great to have you on, Nigel. Nice to see you again. Nigel Evans, looking great on a Wednesday morning. Thank you to him, former Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons. Those last comments on benefits. Let's get another one. This comes from Perry.
I am seriously sort of thinking about sliding slowly away from Reform and going more for Labour. I think Labour's got more to offer me than Reform. But then I look at Labour and I think I wouldn't have to do all that. I wouldn't have to take financial risks. I wouldn't have to take the hassle of hiring more people. I could just say that I suffer from depression and anxiety and get the similar sort of money as what I'm earning now. And also, I'm not keen on broccoli, so that would probably entitle me to a mobility vehicle, although she has dashed my hopes of it ever being a Mercedes or a BMW. But, you know, as long as it's a brand new VW. So, yes, I think I am sliding away from Reform. Sorry, Nigel, I want me 25 quid back.
support our people of Palestine, of course, and Iran. It's pretty clear and evident. And the massacre of 165 girls. But our blood is considered cheap, but it's not. It's just as equal. Humans are all equal.
What about the bombing of the Ayatollah? What did you think of that?
He was destined for that. That was his destiny, and he fulfilled his dream. He died for the cause of his belief.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Loads of comment on Angela Rayner, on Pip, and of course on that mass prayer taking place in Trafalgar Square as well. This comes from Natasha, who says, can we stop saying our Ange? Because she's certainly not mine. It does maybe sounds a bit too endearing, doesn't it? Our Ange. You're right, love. We're so caricaturing Angela Rayner into a 1970s sitcom character for some reason. That's the way it should be. Ruth in Hartlepool, I look forward to the official picture of Angela Rayner with Donald and Melania Trump. Yeah, I would absolutely. I'd pay good money to see the meeting in the Oval Office, as I mentioned a second ago. We'll talk to Samara Gill in just a second, our breakfast reporter. Of course, before we do, on that Trafalgar Square mass prayer, here's a voice note from Sharon.
Morning, Ian. Nice to see you on a morning. I think we've got to a tipping point now in this country where the Muslims are showing their dominance and we're letting them do it. It's very frightening. What we really need to do now is we need a really strong government, which we haven't got at the minute, to start rewinding and saying, no, we're not accepting this. And King Charles, I just don't think. I think the same. Someone said that it is more the Muslim faith. He's never mentioned the Muslims in the past. It's all of a sudden, do these people know something that the public don't? Because it seems to me that the government and the royal family, royalty, all have been told something.
It does feel that way, doesn't it? We spoke to Bishop Kieran Dewar a little earlier on what he saw as the deliberate dissembling of Christianity, our identity deliberately eroded as a Christian country. He pointed to the king, and of course you can look beyond political leaders and the like, the archbishops of Canterbury, who just don't sound as if their heart is really in this Christian thing, which is a bit odd when you're the head honcho of the Christian faith alongside the king, who's also the head honcho of the Christian faith. We'll have more comments on that along the way. You can voice note us or call on 0344 499 1000. Let's look at this story. The Jewish music producer subjected to a shocking anti-Semitic attack in North London. It's a horrific headline. Sadly, not a surprising one, because we're seeing more and more of this. Our reporter, Talk Breakfast reporter Samara Gill, has been right across this. Samara, morning to you. Tell us more.
Morning, Ian. Yeah, I completely agree with that description. It is shocking, but it's not surprising. You know, even when I showed up to his studio to record the interview, I was thinking, and I listened to him and I saw the tears in his eyes at what happened to him, which we'll get into in just a second. I was thinking, I cannot believe this is kind of becoming a regular occurrence in the United Kingdom. People getting disrespected for their faith and actually getting almost killed for it. Let's just take a look at what he said happened to him.
At the top of his voice, Heil Hitler, death to all Jews, you should all be dead, go to the gas chambers, etc. and worse. So I was either going to run in the house and hide or try and stop him, because, you know, I don't think we can sit back and just leave it anymore. So knowing full well you never know what he's going to bring out from his jacket, I kept a couple of metres behind him and just said, stop it, disappear. So he continued a lot louder and continued with even more horrific abuse. And I said, if you do it again, I'll call the police, which is really the only option you've got, you know. So I called 999, and walking behind him so I could make sure I knew where he was going for the police. And I lost concentration a little bit of where he was. And as I was talking to the police, he ran at me and threw me in front of a vehicle that was going, what, 25 miles an hour, roughly?
So he physically grabbed you?
He physically ran at me, grabbed me and shoved me in front of the car.
I mean, this, Samara, is absolutely horrific. It's blatant, it's daylight, and as we said at the beginning, it's not the first of these kind of attacks. But the idea that this was done with such casualness from the perpetrator here is horrifying.
Totally. And it's the type of anti-Semitism that, 1930s Germany witnessed, whereby just for being Jewish, you were subject to all types of threats and violence. I mean, he told me that essentially the guy yelled Jew as he pushed him in front of the car. Now, thank God, Brian Harris, who is the music producer in question, was okay, but he survived. He had scrapes on him. He had cuts. He was said that he was very lucky because the driver of the car that he was pushed into was a younger gentleman who was able to stop quite quickly. But he said that if it had been any other instance, we might not even be having that conversation because he might have been killed. This wasn't just abuse. This was near fatal assault, in my view. And I feel like, where was the deterrence? Where is the message? Brian was so upset because he felt so unsupported by this government that continues to pander to every other community but the Jewish community and doesn't want to keep them safe. He was saying his synagogue has been offered one extra security guard in general. That isn't even to do with his own issue, but to do with the rise of anti-Semitism. Where is the actual deterrence on the streets and the education as to not do this? And we see this in Gale's Bakery, just this week. At the Al-Quds Day March, I have never experienced that level of anti-Semitism out on the streets. It is growing and growing. And if we don't pop a cork in it now, it's just going to go completely out of control. I just want to see or show you the reaction after and what Brian has said about the future of Britain.
Where is the political will to prevent this country sinking into something I think that's really, really serious, because it's not being dealt with?
Many people have exited the country. Many have moved to Israel and other parts of the world. I mean, is that something you'd ever consider doing, especially after this horrific event?
I don't think you will find a Jewish family in this country who have not sat round the dinner table at some stage in the past 2 years and have said, are we safe here? Should we go? How do we go? What are the circumstances with our families if we stay or will we go? I guarantee you every Jewish family have had that conversation. Well, isn't that what happened in the 1930s in Germany? And areas of the country are now no-go areas.
I mean, this is an outrage, isn't it? We've got no-go areas for Jewish people in this country. Do we know anything, Samara, about the perpetrator? What has happened? What have the police said? Did he get away?
Yeah, so to the police's credit, they came in about 3 minutes and they heard the whole thing transpire because obviously he called them before he was pushed. But unfortunately, the perpetrator is still alive and well and on the streets and hasn't been caught. Now, the police are trying to scan CCTV footage from the nearby synagogue. They're trying to ask other people who might have witnessed the attack if they've got any type of lead. But, this was a young person from Brian's description, someone who might have been radicalized online through all the propaganda that the pro-Palestine activists spew online. And I guess it emboldened him to go and push a random stranger into moving traffic because he just assumed that he was a Jew because he was walking near a synagogue. This is a very dangerous precedent. And I feel like things like this are just 1 degree away from that synagogue terrorist attack that we witnessed late last year. So, we need to bring these stories to light. We need to call them out for what they are, blatant, rancid Jew hatred. And I'm just very thankful that Brian is okay. And he's an avid watcher of Talk and a massive fan of yours, Ian. So he's just a lovely guy. And it was just harrowing to see what had happened to him and what he'd been a subject of. You could see he was very affected by it still.
Listen, Tamara, it's a troubling story. Thank you for sharing that. We wish Brian, lots of love after that. This should not be happening in the 21st century. Samara Gill, Talk Breakfast reporter, of course, with us here on the programme. But it's not an isolated incident. Do you know, I've told this story before. When I was at school, and this is kind of in the, so this is the early 80s, I had a teacher, she was a drama teacher actually, but it should have been a history teacher that was telling me all about this. She taught us all of our history about the Jewish story, if you like. She had her own family story of grandparents and concentration camps and the plight of the Jews from that period sort of up to the present day. And her name was Tessa Feynman, and she's still around, and I have bumped into her, and I worked alongside her son for a little bit as well. She was just amazing, this woman. She was an absolute force. And in the drama lessons, she told a story that should have been taught in the history. I don't know what happened to history in the 1980s, but we didn't get any of that stuff about really the kind of implications of the war, the Holocaust, the plight of Jews, what happened to those Jews, where survivors went, the Jewish population in this country, nothing at all. It came from Mrs. Feynman, the drama teacher. And she just brilliantly, and I don't think we really, at the time as kids, digested that this was kind of her story, in the sense that it was she talked about her grandparents, but I think it was more the overarching view of what had happened. But it was always completed with the kind of line that was then. That was then. It's not now. That was then. This doesn't happen now. You know, Jews are safe now. The ones that came to this country are safe now. And I always remember being, and I don't know why it used to hit me between the eyes, these stories she would tell. And I really digested it and understood where she was coming from and the whole entirety of it. But I felt a sense of a kind of relief from the haunting stories. And she was telling it appropriately to our age. The sense of relief was that it's no longer, we can breathe again. It's not happening anymore. Fast forward to 2025, 2026, it is happening. It's back, and it's back on one case is too many. But we're not seeing one case, we're seeing multiple cases. And I think they're probably, in many respects, encouraged by the fact that we spent an entire year allowing anti-Israel, anti-Jew marches to take place, not just in the capital. The fact that after a synagogue shooting where people die, you can have a march and a protest that very evening. The fact that the Al-Quds March still kind of took place. Nothing from the government, no sense of anything we've just been talking about, no real acknowledgement of the problem here. The reason it's back isn't just because we live among people who don't care and they're just anti-Semitic in their very core, but we have a government that does nothing to dissuade it. And that's the crime scene here. Our political masters at Westminster are silent, and that is a crime in itself. Let's get a voice note on faith. This about the Christian faith. We talked a little earlier, of course, about the prayers going on in Trafalgar Square. We talked to the bishop about the eradication of Christianity. Here's Pedro.
Good morning, Ian, and everyone who is part of Alarm Clock Britain. Keep up the good fight. Ian, I'm afraid to say, listening to some of the callers, there are still many, many, many naive people. They're slowly waking up, but one of the biggest things they've got to realise and accept is the current politicians and the past ones do not care about you. Look at it this way. We are minions serving. We are here to serve. They don't care.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good morning. It is the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. Jez is off for today. It's Ian Collins in Jez's big throne up till 10 o'clock this morning. Lots going on, lots to talk about, including what's happening in the White House. Donald Trump, he's got a lot of things he's throwing out there at the moment. He's attacking the BBC over what he calls its corrupt and fraudulent coverage of the Iran war in a fresh attack on Britain's state broadcaster. He said the BBC's reporting was unbelievable. Not the first time, of course, and he is embroiled in a big, was it 50 billion quid's worth of court case or something like that, which could certainly dismantle the BBC somewhat. At the same press conference, he also blamed Keir Starmer for the decline of the special relationship, and he even talked again about Winston Churchill. Let's have a listen.
You see that man right there? You know who that is?
Churchill. Winston Churchill.
The late, great Winston Churchill. And Barack Hussein Obama did not want his bust in this office. Did you know that? And Barack Hussein Obama sent that bust back to England. They didn't want it. And when I came in, I was asked if I wanted it. I said, absolutely, I want it. And I put it right there, Winston Churchill. And, you know, unfortunately, Keir is not Winston Churchill.
Well, he got a kind of double swipe in there, didn't he? He got the Barack Hussein Obama. He got that bit in there. Then he got the Churchill swipe in again. What is going on over there at the Oval Office? By the way, I don't think Obama... he said he sent it back to England. I don't think they UPS'd it back, did they? I don't think the everyman showed up at number 10. I mean, I've got a statue for you, Prime Minister. I don't think that happened. It was probably put in a back room somewhere. Let's speak with Matthew Bryser, former White House official under Barack Obama, or is that Barack Hussein Obama? He does know what he's doing, doesn't he, Mr. Trump? Morning to you, Matthew.
Good morning. Actually, I was in the White House with George W. Bush, but worked for Obama, but he doesn't know. You know, he really is confused, and it's unbelievable how he doesn't seem to pay any attention to the intelligence briefings that come to him. There's a story in the Washington Post about how he was warned that Iran was going to react just as it has to an attack, and he said, "I had no idea that was going to happen." It's really bizarre.
It is a bizarre time. It's interesting, the Iran war, which the smart money suggests Mr. Trump was hoping for a kind of in and out approach to this. Couple of weeks, done, dusted, regime changed, new fella comes in, sorted. It hasn't quite panned out like that. Can he still salvage what's potentially gone wrong here?
I don't think he can, and I totally agree with you. He had even publicly said that he was hoping for a Venezuela-like situation where you remove the one leader and put in somebody else who's your client and everything's okay. And it was clear that Iran is so much more complicated than Venezuela, with all of Iran's not just political and power divisions, but ethnic differences and groupings, and it's a sort of a jigsaw puzzle of differing ethnic groups. So no, I don't see how he can salvage this. I don't see an outcome that is allowing for a near-term solution, which is a tragic thing to say. I think that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, so the hardcore people, are doubling down now. They feel they've survived Trump's onslaught, and now with the bridge between the IRGC and the political people who maybe want to stop the war dead, meaning in this gentleman Ali Al-Arjani who was killed yesterday. I just don't see the mechanism for climb down now.
It does seem, Matthew, that what's extraordinary about this is that the support for Mr. Trump doesn't divide on the usual kind of Democrat, Republican, blue versus red. You know, when I talked about my hesitation of this war, I had a lot of people getting in touch going, well, you're some mad socialist. I'm thinking, yeah, what, like J.D. Vance or Marjorie Taylor Greene? I mean, these people are ferociously opposed to what is happening, and they're hardly what you'd call left-wingers.
Yeah, that's totally correct. So the big picture in American politics is that this war of choice is splitting or dividing the MAGA coalition of Trump, his base. Trump fundamentally was elected, if you look at public opinion polling in the United States, he was elected to do two primary things. keep the U.S. out of new wars and reduce prices, so fight inflation. And he brought the U.S. into a war of choice, and it's leading to higher and higher inflation. So he is in big trouble. But, you know, unless he breaks the Constitution and runs again somehow in 2028 or hangs on the power, he's finished after this term. So I'm not sure he really cares about the Republican Party and its fate in the upcoming elections.
Yeah, that may well be the case. There's a lot of things he does care about, though. The BBC. He's yet again having another go at the BBC. Let's have a listen and a watch to what he said.
But it's no longer accurate. It really is. It's corrupt, fraudulent news. It really is. It's fraudulent. It's not just fake. It's beyond fake. It's really criminal what they do. But I watched BBC this morning, and I don't know much about BBC other than what took place, because people were calling me saying, that was a terrible thing you said. I said, what did I say? And I said, I never said that. And when we checked it, do you agree? They agree. It was somehow generated, I guess, by AI or something, with me saying unbelievable. So we brought a lawsuit against them.
Yeah, there would have naturally, Matthew, been somebody from the BBC in that room. I wonder what they were thinking as he was saying all of that. I mean, he speaks in superlatives. He likes a hyperbole. It's part of his thing. To some people, that's an attraction. To other people, it's a distraction. But what do you make of this? I mean, is he trying to change the terms of a press conference by bringing these other things up?
Well, he always is doing that, yeah. And he gets seized with negative publicity. He attacked the U.S. media even more, or just as much as attacking the BBC. In press conferences, if someone asks him a question that he doesn't want to answer, he'll call that journalist to their face. Stupid, disrespectful, you have no right. So, I mean, easy for me to say, but don't take it personally, BBC. And I think, the vast majority of people know that what the BBC is, right? Okay, maybe you can argue the editorial line is left of center, but the journalists are as professional as any on earth. And, he takes cheap shots at all journalists.
Indeed. He also takes cheap shots at the Prime Minister, although we quite enjoy that. We have popcorn at the ready every time this happens. Here's Mr. Trump yesterday speaking about that relationship with Keir Starmer.
Tremendous long-term relationship with the UK. I mean, people would say it's the best. I don't want to get into that, but we've had, it was the longest, the oldest, should be the best. Always was the best until Keir came along, and I like him. He's a nice man. He says everything beautiful. He's a very nice man with a beautiful family. Everything's perfect, but he doesn't produce.
That is a kind of textbook example of sort of passive-aggressive stuff, isn't it? It's like he's a lovely guy. Yep. He's a really got lovely family. Everything's fantastic. He's just rubbish. So he doesn't hang around there. Do you sense, I mean, that there is certainly in Trump's mind, there is a change, irreparable damage to the relationship between our two countries, Matthew?
In his mind, I think there is, because Keir Starmer didn't do exactly what Donald Trump wanted, which is, open up all of the UK's military bases to the U.S. attack on Iran and join in, and now isn't joining in on reopening the Strait of Hormuz. But, President Trump, he doesn't understand or even have interest in history or transatlantic relations. And so he said even a more outrageous thing, which is that NATO will never be there for the United States. It never has been. As we know, the only time Article 5, the joint security clause, has ever been invoked was to protect the United States after the September 11th attack. So he personalizes everything. And if you can be his friend yesterday and today, if you don't do what he demands, then you're no longer his friend.
Yeah, I thought the NATO comment was kind of strange. He talked about it as if it was sort of some external body, when America is NATO. I mean, that was the curious thing about it, and arguably the greatest seat at the table of NATO.
By far. I mean, in my diplomatic career, the two go-to organizations were the government of the United Kingdom and NATO. Those have been the cornerstones of U.S. national security, certainly since the Suez Crisis of 1956, but that was just a blip. I mean, since World War II. And he just doesn't appreciate history or the value thereof, and is just tossing it out the window like a spoiled child because he's angry.
Matthew, great to have you on. Always good to see you. Thank you, sir. Matthew Bryza, he's former White House official under Barack Obama and, interestingly, George W. Bush as well, serving under 2 presidents of different stripes. Thank you to him. This comes from Kelvin in Macclesfield, who says the Labour Party are anti-British. Look at the laws they're bringing in for one religion. Everything they are doing is for a minority faith. Look around the world where the same thing has happened before. Iran is a good example. I can't believe these polls that say 70% of our population is against Trump bombing Iran. That's the amount of people who would sit back and let us get nuked first before doing anything about it. Trump was right to do it. You cannot wait to be nuked. Even then, the 70% of deadheads wouldn't attack back. I mean, I get that sentiment, but there are an awful lot of the right-wing hawks. I meant, Ron DeSantis, J.D. Vance, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who are ferociously against what Trump is doing in Iran. It's the kind of no more foreign wars thing. They also sense that in terms of where this war goes, that this is going to cost more lives for the Americans than any issue it attempts to salvage. And the nuclear threat was already eradicated is one of the arguments, but whatever end of the telescope you wish to be in on that one. Let's get a voice note on Mr. Trump and Ms. Rayner as well. Morning, Brian.
Good morning, Ian. A bit of a fright there, mate. I turned you on and I thought I'd overslept. Regarding Angela Rayner, she'll be sitting opposite Trump and she'll be doing exactly the same as she did to Boris Johnson in Parliament at question time. She will be sitting there trying to put him off. Guaranteed. Cheers, mate.
Conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Good morning. 10 to 8. Ian Collins in for Jezza. On the breakfast show this morning, Pat says, we've seen the true face of Labour in the last 18 months. Labour are done, finished. It feels like they hate England and the English people. I think there's people in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland that feel exactly the same as well. Jackie says, Big Ange, that's Angela Rayner, I think that's big as in character. Right, we're not body shaming anyone here. Should be sent to Russia to have a punch-up with Putin. She would frighten the life out of him. She certainly frightens me. Keep going, Talk, says Jackie. Love that. And Brian says this act of Muslim dominance is solely down to Khan because he would have to have had approval for the application of such a gathering. This was the kind of mass prayer gathering in Trafalgar Square yesterday, which has kicked off some debate, particularly from the Shadow Justice Secretary Nick Timothy, who called this mass ritual prayer in a public place an act of domination. He says in a post on Twitter, I'm not suggesting everybody at Trafalgar Square last night is an Islamist, but the domination of public places is straight from the Islamist playbook. There is a kind of an optics about that, isn't there? And that is a fairly domineering, one could argue, visual. And people look at that and say, well, is that, is this free speech in action? Is this a society that accepts and tolerates people from all stripes and backgrounds in action, or is this something else? A lot to talk about here. And also this, the former UK ambassador has said that it's undeniable that Islamist ideology is rife within the civil service, which is creating anti-Israel sentiment. We were talking about anti-Semitism as well. Edmund Fitton Brown, who was a British diplomat for more than 30 years, claimed that rising hostility towards the Jewish state in wider society was being mirrored across Whitehall. And also a British October 7th survivor, Anat Ronkendel, the only known UK-based British Israeli to survive Hamas massacres. His father was shot dead metres away from him by Hamas, accuses the UK government as normalising anti-Semitism and appeasing bigotry. That is an irredeemable theme out there at the moment, not just that there is anti-Semitism, but it's being tacitly encouraged, certainly not discouraged, by our own government. Dr. Alan Mendoza joins us, Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society and Reform UK's Chief Advisor on Global Affairs. Good to see you again, Alan. I mean, it is, we've talked a lot this morning already about these kind of growing cases of anti-Semitism. They're not just little moments in the street. Some of these are violent, some of them are almost lethal, they're horrendous, and they're on the up. What on earth is going on?
Well, what on earth is going on, unfortunately, Ian, is the legacy of years of doing nothing about it. The reason anti-Semitism is growing in the UK is because the penalties for anti-Semitism have not been made clear or enforced to those who have been perpetrating them. And we've seen a massive increase over time as anti-Semitism has, come to the fore from people who might not have said anything anti-Semitic a few years ago, but have felt that they've been empowered to do more now. So it's, unfortunately, it's a trend that's stemming now from the far left, from Islamist sources. That's responsible mainly for the increase, and that is causing a huge worry for Britain's Jews, I think. Absolutely. And when you hear an experienced civil servant, former civil servant, speaking out in this kind of way, I think we should sit up and take notice. Well, yes, exactly. I mean, the idea, if someone's come out and said he believes Islamism is rife in the civil service as an ideology, it does accord with things that I hear from civil servants I know who are worried about the impact of this particular ideology within the people who essentially ensure Britain runs. It's difficult to challenge it, apparently, and people are scared of being called racist if they call it out. And again, let's just be very clear. This is not about Islam as a religion. This is about people who believe in Islamism, which is, if you like, the political version of Islam, which they feel it should inform every aspect of life. That is very different to most Muslims who obviously see it as a religion within the UK. But here are people who actually want to impose it upon not only themselves, but others as being the code within which they want to rule, to sort of live their lives. And that is, I think, a massive problem again. Yeah. It needs to be tackled within the civil service.
Indeed. And of course, it's not. What's curious about these stories, Alan, is it's not always. We're not always just talking about Muslims that are advancing this cause. I mean, there's plenty of non-Muslims on the left who, for some reason, I've never quite fathomed it. I don't know whether they think it makes them less likely of being accused of being a racist or something. It's just, in the same way that you never really get the left condemn issues in the Middle East, well, even ISIS and horrendous stories such as that. They almost can't bring themselves to condemn a brown person. I think that's at the heart of it. And it goes against everything. It feels as if it's sort of counterintuitive to everything they stand for. And if they start talking about Islamism, political Islamism, then that might make them a bad person. Is it that, or as simple as that, or is there something else going on here?
Well, it's a bit more complicated. I think you're right, of course. There is that, kind of prevalence of, me white bad, you not white good. What you're doing, therefore, I cannot challenge because of my terrible history of colonialism and a legacy of oppression, that kind of political ideology built in. But I would argue it's something more than that. It's often called the soft bigotry of low expectations. Often this sort of white saviour complex, to use the phrase they like to use themselves in this way, is driven by the sense actually of inverse racism. It's basically saying, we're the oppressors, but we're not expecting anything of you. We are expecting that you are, of a low mindset. You don't know any better. We can't impose anything on you, and therefore we don't expect you to change. And it's actually a form of racism, essentially, to go and say, because you are a different colour as such, we are not going to dare expect you to do anything different. Yeah. So there are complicated reasonings within the left. Some of it is, guilt. Some of it is, kind of trying to whip yourself. And some of it, I think, is actually a sense of, there, let's pat these people on the head and say you're okay to do this. So all these things come together in a very potent cocktail, and that leads to a situation where an ideology that should be challenged, because essentially it is akin to fascism, is not challenged. And we end up with its growth and its deleterious effect, firstly on Muslims themselves, who are often the first victims of Islamism, those who are not Islamists, and then everyone else who become the next victims after those Muslims who are victims first.
Worth having a listen to Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, on that issue of radical Islam. Here he is.
Radical Islamic movements in the world identify the West writ large, but the United States in particular, as the greatest evil on the earth. And every chance to have the notion that somehow radical Islam would be comfortable with simply controlling some province in Iraq or Syria is just not borne out by history. Radical Islam has shown that their desire is not simply to occupy one part of the world and be happy with their own little caliphate. They want to expand. It's revolutionary in its nature. It seeks to expand and control more territories and more people. And radical Islam has designs openly on the West, on the United States, on Europe. We've seen that progress there as well.
I mean, on that point, Alan, do you think there is a radical Islamist threat to the UK?
Of course there is. There are people in this country today, even British citizens, who don't believe in the British values that have traditionally, empowered this country. They fundamentally oppose them, and they wish to impose in their stead a 7th century code of law from Arabia. That is what they wish to bring in. That is quite clear. They have said it openly. No one's hiding this, Ian. This is the interesting part. There's no sort of secret about this. There are people in the UK who are openly going around, spreading Islamist mantras. Yeah. They're not ashamed of saying so, and we are just not listening to what is happening.
We're not listening, and as I said at the beginning, there's almost a tacit encouragement coming from quarters that should, frankly, know better. Alan, we have to stop there. Great to have you on. Dr. Alan Mendoza from the Henry Jackson Society with us on Talk. Right now, the time is exactly 8 o'clock. Let's get the news.
Labour MPs, they say, listen, Keir, your position is untenable. This is all about appointing that rat, Peter Mandelson.
We've now had another resignation from Number 10. The plot is sickening, the noose is tightening.
His failings are internal. He's useless, incompetent, has no political judgment.
This is all part of Starmer's reset, getting rid of his inner circle. So Chris Wormold, we think fairly reluctantly, has stepped down.
What an absolutely crazy week for Keir Starmer. His second cabinet secretary, gone. His third chief of staff, gone. His fourth director of communications, gone.
Across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk Breakfast, and good morning. It's Ian Collins in for Jezza on The Breakfast Show. It's Wednesday, 18th of March, just gone 8 o'clock. We're absolutely rammed at this end. Everything from Angela Rayner, anti-Semitism, what is happening to PIP claimants in the UK, and Donald Trump is having another pop at the BBC. Good man. Details to come, 0344 499 1000. Bit of an update as well, as you may have heard there on the news, on the meningitis story in Kent. The number of cases being investigated by health officials has now risen to 20. That's up from 15 previously. It's a bit of a moving story. We're not, by the way, I'm seeing people online talking about get your masks ready. No. Social distancing, no. Lockdown, definitely not. But there are agitators out there saying this is the way you respond. No, you don't respond. We're a civilised first world country. We have medical systems in place to deal with it, and they are brilliantly dealing with it now down there in Kent, Canterbury in particular, where this tragic outbreak began. We will keep you, of course, fully up to date. On that issue of disability payments, I was referring to it earlier. It's doubled in 7 years, the amount of people claiming personal independent payments. So that's double. We're talking about 4 million Brits. You are bound to up 4 million Brits. This is just one benefit, by the way. 4 million Brits are claiming this. We understand. I keep saying this. I feel I have to put this caveat in every single time. If somebody is disabled, whether it's physical, whether it's a mental health issue, a serious psychological issue in that respect, then most taxpayers are, in fact, all taxpayers go, yeah, that's where my money goes. I want to help people in trouble. 4 million? Seriously? 4 million? What is wrong with everybody? Have we seriously got a crisis this big, or is there something else going on this very issue? Here's a voice note from Judith.
Good morning, it's Judy from Altofts, West Yorkshire. The people to blame for all these folk claiming PIP, it's doubled, has it, in, 4 or 5 years, is the government. When they give people a form to fill in that says you can claim for being obese, having a drug problem and having a drink problem, people are obviously going to claim. So what did they expect? Say, oh no, I like drinking a lot, but I'll not claim this. I think the government has made it too easy for anybody to claim anything. They don't assess people, so anyone with a drink and drug problem and being fat can claim anything. Thank you.
We are in strange times on this one. I had this message earlier on from Liam in Accrington. I hope you're still listening, Liam, who says, I have anxiety, PTSD and depression. I'm sorry for being on benefits. I wish I wasn't. And you don't have to be sorry, Liam, as I refer you back to the comment I made a second ago. Anyone who has a legitimate issue, physical or otherwise, that's exactly the group of people, including yourself, Liam, that people want to help. Naturally, when the numbers involved are so big, 4 million Brits, and a lot of young people as well, we are forced to ask, how many of that group are in such a serious, debilitating condition that they cannot go to work? I mean, that is extraordinary, right? That is sort of off the charts in terms of a disturbing stat of our times. 0344 499 1000. We'll take some more calls and comments on Angela Rayner. Hoping to speak to Dan Hodges shortly as well. He's all across these stories of Starmer and Rayner. She's on manoeuvres, by the way. She's out there. She's looking for the big gig. She wants the job. She's not even hiding it now, despite saying a little while ago, I don't want the job as a Prime Minister. I'm quite happy to be the Deputy. I've come a long way. Oh, good for you, Ange. But you do want the big job, right? On another issue, let's speak to Anne, who's over here in Gwynedd. Anne, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Nice to have you with us. What are your thoughts?
Well, I was rather concerned about the mass Muslim prayers, prayers in Trafalgar Square. Mm-hmm. It's insidious and it's a step too far. Are they trying it on to see what this weak government will do? Will they go for the Muslim vote or the country?
Do you think, I mean, I was just going to say, Anne, on that point, because we hear a lot of people say, you know, that's all the Labour Party are about, appeasing this one group. Now, they're not going to win an election by appeasing one group, right?
Well, no, but...
They might cover a few seats that are a bit wobbly and could go against them, but they won't win a general election by appeasing 4% of the population.
No, but it's still insidious, isn't it? But pause for thought, Lebanon was once a Christian country.
Interesting. How far back do you have to go for that?
Well, exactly. It's not that long in history. And before I go, can I say, Rayner, says she's working class. What working class person can afford £7,000 for a bed?
It's a big bed, though. Come on. I mean, give her a break. A woman works hard. She needs a big bed. Stay there, Anne. Don't go away. I want to speak to Chris in Shropshire on this subject. Chris, what have you got for us? Good afternoon. Oh, good. I keep doing it. Good afternoon. I said evening a second ago. Good morning, Chris.
Morning, you all right?
Yeah, good. What are your thoughts?
I was just a bit sort of concerned with the bias on this station. I mean, I'm right wing. I'm not a big fan of Islam. I'm not a big fan of Israel. I prefer my own people and our way of life.
Yeah.
But I seem to find you very anti-Islam, very pro-Israel. Every day I seem to hear, all of your hosts.
Yeah.
But I'm a bit concerned you never seem to mention the extreme supremacists that are in the side of Zionism that you never mention. And a bit, this whole war, the plan that they have, that they want to create the greater Israel. And if you look at the map they've created for greater Israel, it includes Iran, Lebanon, the countries that we're told are creating nuclear weapons, just like Iraq, that we were lied to by Benjamin Netanyahu. Now Iran, we've been lied to. You haven't mentioned they had a fatwa on nuclear weapons.
So
they were not going to produce nuclear weapons.
Which bit were we lied to on Iran?
Which bit we lied to? That they had chemical weapons. Dr. David Kelly come back and told us.
Well, that's Iraq.
2 weeks later.
You're talking about Iraq.
With his wrist.
Well, I mean, you can, I know what you get.
No blood where he was found.
The David Kelly conspiracy theory. We can park that for another day. I'm not disputing.
Well, that's out of the news. That's out of the media.
Well, all right. So you're saying he was bumped off. I mean, let's be honest. Iraq had chemical weapons. I mean, if it was that much of a conspiracy, they'd have just planted some in the desert and produced them, wouldn't they? Come on, let's be honest about it. In terms of Iran, in terms of your wider point about, I think most people haven't got a problem with Muslims. They have a problem with Islamism, and that's the issue. There's the distinction, right?
Using the term conspiracy theorist about a news article about somebody that was murdered or died in this country, you say that's the first thing you do is conspiracy theorist.
Well, because you were suggesting that there was some, that David Kelly was bumped off because of what he said.
Well, Dr. David Kelly, there was no blood found around his body. This was in the newspapers. There's no blood, but his wrists were slit. Makes sense of that. I mean, you'd have to be an idiot to think that makes sense.
Well, his family haven't come out and challenged this. But I mean, do we want to debate a story from God knows how many years ago, or do you want to stick to what you originally called for, and that was the issue around political Islamism, which is what I think people are against, some of the anti-Jew and anti-Israel marches, not the average Muslim.
So do they believe they're God's chosen people and they need to enslave the world and create a greater Israel? No, they don't. Well, you never mention that, do you? Do you mention that...
Who's God's chosen people? When you say God's chosen people, I mean, does every faith not have a belief that they are God's chosen people?
No. So I've got some Jewish friends who would come on and talk to you and openly admit that they're. I've got Muslim friends and Jewish friends.
You haven't, Chris. Come on, you're just making this up now. You haven't got any friends.
Just because clearly you're obviously a racist and you don't have friends from.
Hang on. Why am I? Why am I? Look, you started off by saying you're a fairly sane, sensible right winger, etc. And now, through saying literally nothing, you've deduced I'm obviously a racist.
Yes, because all you go on about, you bash about anti-Islam. Now, like I said, I'm not a fan of Islam myself. But
right, OK, so how do you and I differ in that case?
Because you don't talk about the problems with Israel.
Well, I could tell you that I think Netanyahu's not a great leader and he's probably a bit of a step too far for the people of Israel. I mean, I've never said anything great about Benjamin Netanyahu because I don't like the bloke very much. Don't know him, but he's not the guy I would put in charge of restructuring Israel and its partnerships with associated and neighbouring countries. I mean, does that help you? But how does it make you? How does it make you a racist to not slag off Benjamin Netanyahu?
Because you're obsessed with brown people and Islam on this show. That's
you've gone there. You've gone there. So even if I said for the 15th time political Islamism as distinct from Islam, that doesn't help you.
You don't distinguish brown people in Islam. That's all you're going about. Islam.
No. Quite the opposite. I've said it every single time we've talked about it this morning and every day for the last God knows how many years. Political Islamism as distinct from Islam.
And how about political Zionism? Zionism is a political movement which is to enslave basically the Goyim, which is what we are, the non-believers. What about that? You don't mention that.
Well, because I'm talking about people in this country, whether they're Muslims or whether they're Jews, and where we have a cultural commonality. And Israel is a first world country, and Israel as a country and an ally, we have a cultural assimilation with that country. You can talk about Zionism all you like.
The assimilation is for us. So for us to be enslaved.
So you're saying the Jews want to enslave us? The Jews want to enslave us? Is that what you're saying?
No, they don't.
You said you got Jewish friends. You haven't got Jewish friends, Chris.
Yeah,
you're making stuff up, aren't you, mate?
Orthodox. They do not like Zionism. They're anti-Israel. They don't believe they're God's chosen people. They will tell you that they've interpreted it.
Okay, right. Generally speaking, then, do you think we have in this country the same problem with Judaism as we do with radical Islamism?
No, it's worse, because if you have a look,
it's worse. Is it really?
Have a look at who half of our politicians are married to. Have you checked out
who carried out terror attacks in this country in the last 25 years?
Yes, I have. Yes.
Good. Thank you very much for your call, Chris. That's Chris in Shropshire. I got there in the end, sort of. I don't think he quite knew where he was going. This will be Gavin in Birmingham. On a different point, Gavin, what have you got for us? Good morning. There I go again.
Good morning, Ian.
Morning.
To be honest, I think, it can all be boiled down, really, to less than 1% of the population of the world. I think general population, I don't care what religion you are, just don't inflict it on me if I don't want to. Or I think it's down to literally these governments enforcing things that we do not want. You've got the European Union with Ursula von der Leyen pushing things onto Britain that we don't want. But it always boils down throughout history, less than 1% of kings, queens, that cause the devastation for the most of people.
It always is. And you know, when people talk about, you know, it's only a minority, you know, the Nazis were once only a minority. It is a small percentage, but that percentage can be absolutely lethal.
Exactly. Everyone can have a point of view, and I agree with that. You have a point of view, I have a point of view, we can have a discussion about it, but at the end of the day, it's that very small minority that are in power that ruin it for the rest of us.
Yeah.
End of. So it's literally...
But here's the weird thing, though, Gavin. If you had, like, a Labour politician sitting here now, they would say to me and you, do you really think I wake up in the morning to try and ruin the country? I wake up in the morning to make it better. That's what they would say, though, right? Now, you and I would look at them and say, you're not of this planet, mate, because you are ruining the country. But they would argue that isn't their intention.
Whether it's their intention or not, is just the fact. The fact of the matter is that small percentage is ruining it for the rest of us.
Yeah.
Taxes should not be this high.
No.
Why are we giving away so much money to idiotic causes when our poor people are either homeless or can't feed themselves, can't heat?
Correct.
People who've paid their taxes, it's just like grandparents, I can't afford my heating. So
we should never here we are, and I always use that phrase, it's the 21st century. We should never be in a place where our elderly people, where in some cultures they are almost worshipped like royalty, the elders, the most experienced, the sage-like wisdom merchants of the family tree, would always be looked after, and we don't seem to be able to do that very well in this country. And similarly for former military personnel, no one who served in the armed forces should be sleeping in a shop doorway. That is just a fact. Gavin, I've got to move for no reason other than time. Thank you very much indeed for that. 0344 499 1000. More of your calls on the way. So much to get through, whether it's Angela Rayner, Matey, who called us a second ago with his tinfoil hat on, or anything else you want to talk about. Lines are open. This is Talk.
The Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royal tea from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to The Royal Tea from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Yeah, good morning. Welcome to breakfast. It's Ian Collins in for Jezza for today. This one in from Jess is, I'm so sick of Labour. We are still paying for Angela Rayner's security. And has she paid her tax yet? What a hypocrite. I think we should all send flip-flops to the government as a vote of protest. Yeah. This government needs flip-flops. Let's talk about another aspect of Westminster. The opposition, Kemi Badenoch, Sun columnist today. She's talking about forcing a Commons vote on axing Labour's 5p fuel duty hike on drivers. Sir Keir Starmer has refused to give certainty to motorists, but instead vowed to review the situation in September when the current 5p cut is phased out. Pump costs have risen spectacularly to their highest levels in 18 months. Unleaded up 4.1p on Monday to hit an average of £1.40 per litre. Jack Elson is political editor over there at The Sun. Morning to you, Jack.
Good morning, Ian.
Look, listen, I love reading your stuff in The Sun, but, you know, there's a new kid in town, and that is the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, writing a column this morning.
Yeah, you're right. Kemi Badenoch, the Tory party leader, today in the pages of the Sun newspaper accuses Starmer and Reeves of both political and economic insanity by ploughing ahead with that 5p fuel duty hike, the first fuel duty hike in 16 years, at a time where drivers are being whacked at the pumps like never before. So today she's going to force an opposition day debate in Parliament. Now, these votes are actually, they're non-binding on the government, but I think what her aim is to almost embarrass Labour MPs who either vote against it or abstain, and actually spook them with the prospect of Keir Starmer doing one of his famous U-turns, whereas actually he does end up abandoning the 5p hike. And then these Labour MPs who've been marched up the hill on various occasions now look pretty silly to their constituents, who I don't think will thank them for going through the lobbies today to put up that 5p hike. It just seems at a time, and I understand the Starmer point about how, we need to wait till September because we don't know what the situation is going to be. But I do think that drivers probably want some sort of certainty now about what their budgeting is going to be like for the rest of the year, because while 5p sounds like not very much at all, it will add about an extra 200 quid onto an average family bill if it does go ahead.
Yeah, indeed. Let's have a listen then to the Chancellor on this very point.
There is an important role for oil and gas, especially at the moment. You see countries like Canada. There is an important role for oil and gas, especially at the moment. You see countries like Canada and Norway increasing their production, and every country's got to play their part in ensuring that those energy supplies are there when we need them.
Well, I mean, that sounds like a classic political platitude, Jack, to be honest. Didn't say very much there.
No, exactly. And it sums up a lot of this government's thinking.
It does.
They sit on the fence with many issues, and then, despite the fact that things seem inevitable, they seem to lack the political antennae and ability to see round corners, to do things in advance, and then eventually they do move on something. They get no political capital for it whatsoever because they seem to be dragged kicking and screaming. It's the same with the farmers. It was the same with pubs, watering down the Employment Rights Act. I could go on. And it does seem this is going to be another situation where now every major party, apart from the government, Tories, Reform, even the bleeding Lib Dems, are calling for this 5p hike to be axed. It seems that it's almost incredibly likely it won't go ahead because I can't see the cost of living getting any better by the end of the year. Starmer will eventually have to cave on it. He'll have to fold. He would have marched his Labour MPs up the hill to defend it, and he'll get no credit for it whatsoever. It's just a classic case of just the political ineptitude of very large parts of this government.
Absolutely. Give us an overview, if you would, Jack, about the mood in the Labour Party at the moment. I remember before the last election, in fact, when they all had their own party conferences before the last election, you were there. The Tories party conference pre-2024 was essentially a wake. It was a, horrendous. You speak to any Tory MP, they tell you it was the most horrendous period they've ever experienced. People walking around like Romero zombies. It was awful. Labour Party conference, very different, very buoyant. They were excited. They were hungry. They knew they were going to win, and they did win. However, there's been no honeymoon period. The mood among backbenchers now is very different. There's no celebrations going on in Labour HQ right now.
No, you're totally right. In fact, the mood in the Parliamentary Labour Party is incredibly glum. They can see the poll numbers. They can see that their Prime Minister is unpopular by historic levels. They can't really see much of a way out because they have, Reform and the Tories to the right of them. They have Greens and sort of, to a lesser extent, the Lib Dems on the left, who are basically just bleeding into their voter base on both sides in some sort of electoral pincer movement. Now, I do think that there was a time a few weeks ago after the Gorton and Denton by-election where it did feel incredibly febrile in Parliament. Westminster was a bit of a tinderbox. It seemed that Starmer had days, if not weeks, left to survive. Yeah. Obviously, Anas Sarwar went over the top. It doesn't really feel, I don't think, as febrile at the moment. And I think that is because there is a distinct lack, I think, of credible candidates to replace Keir Starmer. Angela Rayner has been out this week, last night, saying, giving out her left-wing stall. And clearly she's playing to the gallery because she knows that if she wants to win the Labour membership, she'll have to appeal to a pretty left-wing constituency there. The problem is that is totally not where the country is at. And so, let's take the immigration reforms, for example. She was out last night, Angela Rayner, attacking Shabana Mahmood's plan to raise the time you have to spend in this country from 5 years to 10 years before you can claim permanent residency. Right? That will play incredibly well with the socialist Labour base, who are very squeamish about these migration reforms. Polling out today by More in Common shows that across every sort of age group, it's actually supported by the country.
Well,
and so
indeed.
You've got this weird inversion, in Labour politics where the membership support one thing, which is totally the opposite of what the country supports.
It's completely bizarre. But, of course, Angela Rayner doesn't want to be Prime Minister, Jack. I mean, she really, really, really doesn't want to be Prime Minister. If you don't believe me, let's have a reminder of this.
Absolutely not. And I don't want to be leader of the Labour Party. I'm very happy and honoured to do the job.
What kind of politician are you? You don't want to be leader of your party?
No, I'm very happy and honoured and to be Deputy Prime Minister of this country. And I've got a lot in my entry to prove that I can do the job that I'm doing and deliver on the milestones for the people of this country. That's what I'm interested in, Trevor.
You know this is being recorded, don't you? Because actually, that means one day, if you do, somebody's going to play it back to you.
Absolutely. I'll be happy for you to play it back to me. I have no desire to go for the leadership of the Labour Party. My desire is to deliver for the people of this country who have given me opportunities beyond what I could have dreamed of.
It's what you politely call an untruth, I think, Jack. I mean, you don't make the kind of statement she was making unless you're trying to galvanise support. And, of course, there is a lurch to the left. That's irredeemable, it seems, for this current government. And Angela Rayner is heading up her case, surely.
Yes, and she wouldn't be the first politician to say that they had no prime ministerial ambitions whatsoever, and then to actually throw their hat into the ring for the top job. A certain Boris Johnson also comes to mind when he said that he would rather be, I think, reincarnated as an olive than stand for prime minister.
Beautiful. Yeah, of all politicians to want to deny they wanted to be prime minister, Boris Johnson. John Major once denied he wanted to be prime minister, and no one ever remembers him being one. So there you go. It does kind of work out sometimes. While you're with us, Jack, another story in The Sun on page 2 of The Sun today. Record 4 million Brits now claiming personal independent payments as disability handouts double in 7 years. We know that Starmer did try to get some welfare reform going in. I mean, it was only tiny what he was looking for. He was just trying to sort of arrest the increase in spending rather than the spending itself. His backbenchers discombobulated and went absolutely nuts on him. People like Angela Rayner now would go absolutely nuts on him. He's in a pincer movement with his own party. No one can get a handle on this. What we do know is the welfare department, the welfare budget is literally unsustainable. No hyperbole, no exaggeration there. It cannot go on like this.
No, you're totally right. I do think this is the biggest issue facing modern Britain. Welfare as a whole is going to hit 400 billion by the end of the decade, and 100 billion of that is going to be sickness benefits alone. Now, to put that in context, that is twice our defence budget every year. So we talk about the fact that our army's been hollowed out. We talk about £1 billion for this, billions pounds for this. We can't find it. Everything is dwarfed by this massive drag anchor on our economy, which is the welfare bill. And if you are one, I think it is a pretty big symbol of unfairness in this country. Many people who do go out to work are being squeezed forevermore. The PIP claimants is clearly some people who claim PIP, which is the health angle of benefits, are in work. Many of them aren't. But the problem is that this sort of £9,000 cash bung, in some cases, does seem to be given out now very fluidly without the significant checks, which I think they merit. And I think this is actually recognised by some people in the Labour cabinet. I think Pat McFadden is trying to convince his colleagues they need to get behind this. And he's also trying to make the moral case for it, because even though there is clearly a blinding economic problem here, which is weighing down our economy and basically just bleeding money, actually having people take these benefits, sometimes just, not going to work, is actually pretty bad for their lifestyle. It just wipes them off. And, I think he's trying to make the case that the work is good for people. But, the amount of people now who are being given this PIP benefit, often over the phone, hardly any consultation, pretty light touch checks, is just, like you said, totally unsustainable.
Absolutely spot on. Jack, great to have you on as ever. Jack Elsom is political editor over there at The Sun, and you can read Kemi Badenoch's column in there today. On that very point, let's get a word from Richard Holden, MP, Shadow Transport Secretary. Morning to you, Richard. On this very point, Kemi Badenoch, your leader, writing about this morning on the insanity of tax rises in an energy crisis.
Yeah, absolutely insane that the government's planning this. Look, it's been planning this for a long time, and we voted against it in the budget. But today, in light of everything that's happening around the world, with oil prices going up as well, we want the government to, think again about what it's doing on this. We're already seeing the government raising extra taxes to pay for that welfare spending that Jack was just talking about. This extra 5p a litre fuel duty increase, salami sliced in from September, so we're going to see a back-to-school tax in September, Christmas shopping tax in December when they put another 2p on, and another 2p in March next year as well. These are big tax rises which are going to hit everybody who drives a car, drives a van, drives a motorbike, but they'll hit everybody as well in the cost of the family shop, because all of our food needs to get delivered and everything else to the shops as well. So this is going to hit right across the board, and it's going to drive up inflation, which will also have an impact on family bills as well.
It's not just, of course, the 5p rise issue, which of course is contentious, and your leader, Kemi Badenoch, saying, we will address this. Keir Starmer can't seem to bring himself to do this at the moment. He's saying, well, we'll have a look at it in September. It's a bit late in the day when the country needs assurances. Certainly on issues such as this.
Well, it really is, because the truth is that they've been talking about this. They voted for this a few months ago. We were against it then. We're still against it now. And I think, remember, this isn't just about a 5p rise. More than half of all the cost of every litre of petrol and diesel you put in your car, more than half of it is tax. That's going to be an extra 5p a litre going in, plus they charge VAT on top of the duty. So you pay VAT on top of the duty, so it'll actually be 6p a litre increase. These are huge tax rises which are going to hit, and the people that hit the most, the people without those massive incomes. So if you've got pensioners, or you've got people on lower incomes who have to use their car to take their kids to school or to get to work, or they use a van for their work purposes. Those are the people who are going to be hardest hit by Labour's tax rises. And these tax rises are coming down the track to pay for welfare increases. That's what they're doing. Labour have made a really clear choice on this. They are raising taxes, including fuel duty, in order to pay for welfare rises. We think that's the wrong approach. Kemi has been very clear on this. Conservatives have been very clear on that. That's why we're forcing a vote in the House of Commons behind me today.
Do you think the Conservatives could go even further? I noticed Ed Miliband got slightly scuppered at the weekend doing a Sunday morning interview when he was shown the pie chart of how much money is taken in taxation. I'm sure you've seen it as well. It was a wonderful moment to see Ed really on the ropes there. But, you know, it's 55% of, if you include fuel duty and VAT, 55% the government get. Then there's the tax they take from the retailers who make their share as well. Wholesale costs, goodness me, I mean, the list goes on. Does this not need a root and branch seismic approach to how we deal with petrol? It's very simple. You go to some countries where they're virtually, I know the Middle East has got, you know, this stuff floating around them all day long, so not the best example. But America, Australia, no one has fuel prices like we do, it seems, Richard. Can something, you know, seismically be done about this?
Well, you know what Conservatives did in government. In 2011, George Osborne cut fuel duty by a penny and then froze it all the way till 2022. Froze it all the way to 2022 for 11 years. And then Rishi Sunak cut it by 5p a litre and then froze it at an even lower level for a couple of years. So you can see what Conservatives want to do in government. We want to keep taxes down, and when we can, we cut them, and then we keep them at that lower level. That's what I want to see happen. We've announced our priorities going forwards at the moment are going to be to get rid of stamp duty and also get rid of business rates on any high street business under £110,000 rateable value. That's basically most shops on the high street, aside from the big supermarkets, really. So that's what we want to do. That's our priority at the moment. But we've got to get the entire tax system and the entire spending system under control. That's why we've also said we've got to see some big welfare reforms. Because if we're going to promise tax cuts, we have to show where the money's coming from. Today we're saying the government shouldn't be raising these extra taxes. That's why we're pushing it in Parliament today. We've also saying, in another vote later on, that they should be stopping the extra tax on students, the 3% interest payment on top of inflation, which students have to pay. We're voting against that today, and we're saying where it's going to come from, the money saved on that, by cutting some of those courses which are useless. We're coming forwards with practical solutions and how to pay for them. That's what we're going to do at every stage, but you can see the direction of travel we took in government, you know, cutting and freezing fuel duty, and that's where we want to be today.
Richard, thank you for your time, sir. Enjoy your day. Richard Holden, Shadow Transport Secretary, with us on the programme. Thoughts on what he had to say. Of course, you might not unreasonably counter some of it. Again, well, you were there 14 years and life didn't get wholly cheaper during that time. 0344 499 1000. More coming from you next on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, yes. Good morning. Ian Collins in for Jezza. Julian says, morning, Ian. Just goes to show how far down the drain we've gone politically in recent years when right-wingers, as if, are calling up defending Islamic extremism and attacking Jews. Like something from the in-betweeners. Jewish friends. Islamic friends. You dealt with him and swept him aside in style. I'm glad you said that, Julian. He was a bit of a curveball. He kind of popped up out of nowhere. Put a few caveats in beforehand. Basically, I'm a right-winger. I'm not sure he was, to be honest. I don't know what the hell he was. But he did have a tinfoil hat on. We know that much. And Ernie says, what exactly was that prayer session in London for? I've only just heard about it, so I don't know. I feel like an attempt to create division and supported by people in high places. You don't see other religions like Judaism, Sikhism, Christianity, Hinduism putting on shows like that. What does it actually achieve and why, says Ernie, which is rather the point that Nick Timothy was making. I don't know if that mass prayer thing happens every year. I think it's meant to symbolise the end of Ramadan. I think that's the case. Sadiq Khan, who's the Mayor of London and a Muslim himself, joined that prayer session. And a lot of people say, look, I'm a bit caught on this one because, it's a free country and, we have lots of different religions. Why can't a religion have a show of its belief system in action in a public place? Others, like Nick Timothy, the Shadow Justice Secretary, saying this is an act of domination. And I get it. I think I understand what Nick Timothy is saying in this respect. There is a sort of an optics there that does look... Again, these are sort of phrases we've all been taught over the last 20 years not to utter. But it does look a bit out of place, doesn't it? In London town. Wonder what the old Cockneys would have made of that back in Victorian Britain. Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor, joins us. Isabel, good afternoon to you. You were not in Trafalgar Square yesterday on your knees praying, as far as I know, just to clarify.
No, I'm not. Neither am I in the United Arab Emirates at the moment. But I would say that where I normally live in Dubai, which is clearly a Muslim country, I've never seen anything like that and would not expect to see anything like that. And I think it would be immensely frowned upon because it is very in your face. And that is not how cultures that respect each other's differences actually operate. I've seen, I don't want to go into too much detail of this because I don't have the story right to my fingertips now, but I think that there have been various iftar celebrations. So that is the breaking of the fast after sunset inside churches in the UK. I'll come back on that if I can get the picture.
I can't wait for that. Goodness me.
I do have a problem with that. I really do have a problem with that. Now, I mean, I've been brought up a Christian. My family were very, very dedicated to their faith. My parents were, it was a very important part of their lives. And my mother was always very keen on interfaith dialogue. So I'm not against that at all. People of all religions and none need to talk to each other. And I enjoy understanding what other religions believe and their value system and so on. But I don't think we need to put it in each other's faces. Indeed. And do that in central London, I do think that is an act of religious aggression, actually.
And that's the point I think Nick Timothy is making. And it's interesting, you talked about being in a Muslim country where you don't see that kind of stuff. The fellow that cuts my hair is a Muslim, and he was saying exactly this to me. He's from Jordan. And he said, I had to almost look up what Sharia law was when I came to this country. He said, because it's not something anybody really talks about in Jordan. But over here, these conversations are live and they're real. He said there's loads of things going on. He said that they're just not really recognisable to him as a Muslim. So something's happening. And we spoke earlier to a bishop on this point, Isabel, who's written a letter to the king suggesting that this country has lost its Christian identity. What do you say to that?
I really fear that's happening, and it's happening fast. And I mean, the acceleration of this in the last year, I think, has been quite extraordinary. Although I do live in the UAE for much of the year, I'm also back and forth all the time, and I'm very well tapped in to what's going on all over the country, thanks to all the people that write to me, that share images and so on. And this is the acceleration of this is quite stunning. You know, you've now got, we'll all notice it in the supermarkets, much bigger signs about celebrating Ramadan, marking Ramadan, marking Eid. Somebody sent me a message yesterday of a school head teacher put out a message to everybody about the timings of Eid celebrations and so on. I've got no problem whatsoever with our pupils in the UK learning about all the different religions and their festivals, but there seems to have been a pivot in the last year. And that pivot is a strong pivot away from our fundamental Christian heritage here in the UK towards a whole new system. Yeah. And I'm very, very concerned about what that means for our culture. It's fine if it's lightly worn, but mass pray-ins, and it's not the first one we've seen. I did a story for Talk about 6 to 9 months ago about those scenes on a beach, on the beach down in Bournemouth. Yeah. That is not wearing religion with delicacy and discretion. You know, I can't think of the Christian equivalent. Maybe we have church choirs that do carols in stations. It's not quite the same thing, is it? Carols are something we can all enjoy, something that's part of our heritage. Yeah. We invite everybody to join in that. What I see there in those images that we're playing to Talk's viewers is quite excluding, I would say. I think that is the word I would use, and it's intimidating. And by the way, where are the women?
I was going to say, there's a distinct lack of women in that pressure. Well, what's that all about? I mean, that's a whole other story in this respect, I guess. You mentioned the word pivot, and there's a lot of pivoting going on, whether it's in religion or whether it's in politics, Isabel. And we know that, the Labour Party can't quite, they're sort of, licking their finger and sticking it in the air and seeing which way the wind blows. Or we were going to be a bit reformy at one point, and Keir Starmer gave a speech that apparently had nothing to do with him about the island of strangers. Now, of course, it appears after a bit of a wounding in a by-election and a few more headlines they didn't much like, they're going more to the left. And who do you unleash on the Labour Party when things are going leftwards, or who unleashes themselves? But Angela Rayner, because she's back on the scene and she's got teeth and she's on manoeuvres, Isabel.
Well, she's always good for national entertainment. I don't want to see her running the country, but I've got a great deal of time for her spirit and energy. She's a lot more interesting to report on than Keir Starmer. But if she is the answer to this nation's problems, then I don't really know what question it is that's being... we are in a very serious time, not just because of what's going on in the Middle East, but because of the state of our economy, which I think is absolutely teetering on the brink. We had a zero growth recorded in the last set of economic indices. We know what's happening with youth unemployment. It is shocking. It's above the average of our key competitors and parallel economies in the EU. And we know also the debate that you've been having earlier today on the show, Ian, about the number of benefits claimants, the millions of people that are apparently too disabled to work. Yeah. I don't know, when I go out, I don't see rows and rows of disabled people staggering around the country. There are plenty of people who absolutely need and deserve this support, but I'm afraid it is patently obvious, overwhelmingly obvious, that there is a significant number of people who are abusing the system, and that is so bad for the people that really need the help.
Indeed. Isabel, thank you. Stay safe. Isabel Oakeshott Talks international editor with us on the programme. Thank you to her on that issue of disability payments. Morning, Danny.
Good morning, Ian. Danny from Bedfordshire here. Just talking about the 4 million people on PIP. One of your previous callers said about that people that have got alcohol problems, drug problems, blah, 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 are on PIP. As a recovering addict, I've been clean, sober 6 years. When I was in addiction, I can definitely verify that so many crackheads, smackheads are getting PIP payments for their addiction. Every dealer knows when every user's payment clears in their bank, and they are there, ready for the payment to clear. They even take them to the petrol stations, to the cash points to get their money out. So for all you hard-working Brits out there, which I am one of them now, That's where your tax money's going.
I don't care who you are, as long as you are not on the side of the Zionist oppressors. They are the most evil people in the world, supported by America, supported by the most stupid, ignorant President Trump.
What about the Ayatollah's death? What did you think of that?
It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. It's like killing the Pope.
The UK on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Good morning. 10 to 9. Ian Collins in for Jezza. On the Talk Breakfast Show, loads to get through, lots of comment coming through from you. Layla Cunningham, Reform UK member, Westminster councillor, joins us after the news at 9. If you've got a question you want to put to Layla, you can call us in 03444 499 1000. You can message it in to 87222. Lots of current stories of the day to put to her after the 9 o'clock news. Now let's return to the story that has been dominating the headlines, not just locally in Kent, but nationally. That's the meningitis outbreak down there in Canterbury, now being treated as a national incident after an infected person was admitted to a London hospital. Wes Streeting has described the spread of the disease, which has killed a sixth form pupil and a university student, as unprecedented. It's been reported that a 9-month-old girl is critically ill in hospital with the disease despite being vaccinated against it. And we know the number of cases of meningitis being investigated has now risen to 20 from 15. Let's speak to Professor Ellie Lee, Professor at University of Kent and a mother of a child who attends the Queen Elizabeth Grammar School. Ellie, good morning to you.
Hi.
It's interesting, your kind of description of who you are, where you work and your own family education does cross this story in multiple areas. I mean, it doesn't need to be said again, the tragedy of what has happened and particularly the loss of two very young people.
Yes, the main thing that I would like to come on your show and say is my absolute and utter admiration for Queen Elizabeth's Grammar School, the head Amelia McElroy and the staff there, and the way they have responded to this situation. The loss of Juliet, it's a small sixth form and a relatively small secondary school. And the loss of Juliet is bearing so heavy on everybody. Yeah. Of course, everybody's first thoughts entirely are with the family and her friends. The school has managed an incredibly difficult situation outstandingly. The messaging has been brilliant. There's a lot of criticism of the Health Security Agency knocking around. My experience of it is that they have been extremely helpful to the school, and so the school has been able to be very clear with parents. So, you know, that's the situation we're in. The children are all in today. The sixth form is getting itself back together. It's very important that they're in.
Yeah.
I'm very opposed to efforts to bring about lockdown. That would be the worst possible thing to do.
Well, I mean, it's a troubling story on so many levels. Clearly, everyone's thoughts are with the parents and the family of the two people that have lost their life as a result of meningitis. Your child goes to that school. I mean, you talked about the school being open, and that's the right thing to do. One of the knock-on effects of something like this happening that we don't really think about too much is the effects on the other children as well. I mean, this is an incredibly traumatic thing.
They need to be together, and the school needs to work their way through all of this together.
Yeah.
My daughter was at the club with Juliet at Club Chemistry. They had a beautiful, happy, joyous evening, celebrating two friends who had turned 18. Actually, on Sunday night, they all knew they needed to get antibiotics. My daughter took antibiotics at 8:30 Monday morning. So the response from the kids has been fast.
Yeah.
And the health centre here was a bit underprepared, but got prepared very fast. The university is basically turned into an antibiotic distribution centre. So at that level, the children who were in any way could think of themselves as close contacts have responded very maturely, very sensibly.
Yeah.
And what they're trying to do is to make sense of the death of a friend,
of course,
and work out how the school copes. And people need to give them space to do that. There's so much noise. There was a helicopter flying over Queen Elizabeth Grammar School on Monday, and the place was mobbed with journalists. It was extremely unhelpful. People need to give the middle of this. There needs to be space to be sensible.
Indeed, there is naturally an interest in something like this for many reasons. Lots of people talking about what happened in the nightclub. I mean, there's various. Nobody yet knows, whether it's sharing vapes, whether it's people kissing, whether it's coughing, whatever it happens to be. I mean, all those questions will be out there, and who knows whether anybody ever gets to the point of knowing precisely where or how this started. But started it did, and those numbers are on the increase. You also lecture at the University of Kent, of course, the other area affected by this, where a student has died. Give us your response as to what's happening at your own place of work there.
I think that the university has tried to be very sensible. I mean, term actually ends on Friday. We're in an assessment week. There wouldn't have been any teaching this week anyway. The university is trying to do its best through provision of, using the Senate to provide antibiotics to anybody who considers they need it. My students who I teach should have been doing an in-person exam on Monday, actually. The exams were put online. I think people need to understand, though, that part of that was to make sure as complete as possible completion of examination, because you don't want a few people not turning up.
Yeah.
So it's not, I think that people, so obviously I'm in a slightly different position. I'm my daughter's mum with Queen Elizabeth School. At work, I'm a member of staff.
Yeah.
So it's slightly different considerations. The thing that overlaps is the absolute importance of adults trying to keep their minds sound and calm, and to not do things that inflame unnecessarily. And the script that is coming into place far, far too quickly is the COVID script, and this is not.
Yeah.
It's a different infection.
Is that, I mean, just on that point, I mean, obviously a university is bigger than a school. I know the University of Kent reasonably well. It's a big campus, and is there panic there because of those headlines and because of those rumours that are sort of fuelled in a kind of COVID sense?
I think that's unfortunately what's increased over the week, and this is what I mean is that I think that people who are reporting on this, I think we could do with a lot less report. And honestly, I think we could do with a lot less reporting.
Yeah.
I think that we could do with the health authorities and people that run the institutions at the centre of it having time and space to calmly deal with the practical and very difficult problem in front of them. Speculation and rumour is so unhelpful, because it makes it very, very difficult to do the right thing. I mean, part of what it's done is I think some students have been panicked into leaving the university.
Yeah, that is the worst issue on that. Listen, Ellie, we have to stop there for time, but thank you, Professor Ellie Lee, Professor at the University of Kent. Thank you to her. This is Talk.
Over the past 36 hours, the United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now, it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead.
I spoke to you about the situation in the Gulf and explained that the United Kingdom was not involved in the strikes on Iran. That remains the case. The basis of our decision is the collective self-defense of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. That is in accordance with international law, and we are publishing a summary of our legal advice. We are not joining these strikes, but we will continue with our defensive actions in the region.
Mr Farage, would a reform government have allowed US forces to use UK air bases for offensive operations in Iran?
Yes is the answer to your question. I would have said to the Americans, please do use our bases. We will be supportive of you on this.
There were a series of very loud blasts in the area of Dubai that I'm based in. That's in the Marina area. It's a very touristy area, actually. Those blasts were the loudest we've heard yet, but equally we are reassured that they are most likely the sound of interception by the UAE's quite sophisticated THAAD interception kit. That is the Terminal High Altitude Area Defence System.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And welcome back. It is Talk. It's Ian Collins in for Jezza. Just gone 9 o'clock. Man, we've got a busy hour coming up. Lots to get through. More calls and comments from you. 0344 499 1000. So many subjects out there this morning, from PIP payments doubling to Angela Rayner on manoeuvres. And, of course, at this time, every week, it's Call Cunningham. Which means, by a beautiful coincidence, we select somebody called Cunningham, and this week it's Layla Cunningham. Would it be fun if it worked that way?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's quite a few Cunninghams.
Could be Brian Cunningham next week, who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
Layla
I should trademark the Call Cunningham.
I think you should.
Keep it to myself.
Yeah, because Brian might get in.
Yeah, exactly.
Before we know it.
Yeah.
That could be lethal. Later is, of course, mayoral candidate for Reform UK in the City of London. That's not far away.
Well, it's 2 years away.
Yeah, well, it's not far in politics.
No, definitely not. But, we have very important elections on May 7th, which are, in a way, a referendum on Labour's London and a referendum on Sadiq Khan,
Do you think people will vote in London on that basis? I mean, Sadiq Khan is widely seen, and OK, it doesn't have to be him, Ken Livingstone did it. I know Boris had a couple of terms in that job. But London has historically been a kind of Labour city. Boris Johnson did change that a little bit. I don't know how much of a Conservative he really was in that respect, you could argue. But do you think London is ready for reform?
Yeah, because I don't think it was always a Labour city. I think growing up it was a bit more mixed.
Probably,
yeah. See, I don't see it as Conservative and Labour or reform. I really see it as just fundamental, basic needs that everyone has, no matter which party you support, and that is safe streets, the ability to buy a home, decent healthcare, a transport system that works, and keeping a bit more money in your pocket, you know, and these are fundamentals whether you're left, right or middle, and that's where the parties have failed. And you know, Ian, what London is, so it is a cosy relationship between the Tories and Conservatives, because what happens is one wins, the other one complains, the other one wins, but really it's the same trajectory, nothing fundamentally changes. You know, you've still got the mad environmental regulations on building and planning and the delay that's actually a betrayal to young people who can't afford a home. Because you do have two classes of people in London, those that own a home and those that don't, and I want to increase those that don't. And then, you know, you've got crime is still going up. You've still got, you know, refugees being placed in social housing over British people. So I think people feel it doesn't really matter who you vote for in terms of Labour and Conservative, it's the same thing. And it's the first time that there is a party that's not interested in that cosy relationship at all.
Just getting things done.
Well, just really a London that works for Londoners. People don't feel it works for them anymore.
It's interesting. We're going to take a call on this in just a second. There was this mass kind of prayer thing yesterday that happened in Trafalgar Square. Sadiq Khan went along. This was, I think it was the end of Ramadan. I think that was the symbolism of what was happening. So you had, it looked like a good few hundred people there, mostly men, interestingly. I don't know why that might be. You might be able to shine some light. And the mayor himself went along. Sadiq Khan is a Muslim himself, so he joined in the prayer. You're a Muslim. If you're mayor, will you be joining in the prayer? Will it still be going on?
No, I don't think it should be going on. Number one, we're a Christian country. And so we do have a rise of Islamism in this country, and what people don't realize, you know, when you talk about an Islamist, people tend to think of a terrorist. But there is a scale of Islamism, and on the other scale, it is once it stops being about religion and it starts being about a political dominance. And, you know, when you have men praying in front of 10 Downing Street, that's not to do with religion, that's got to do with a political dominance.
Well, that's what Nick Timothy said. I know you know he's Conservative, but did you rather agree with him?
I did. You know, you don't have that in the Middle East. You cannot do that in the Middle East because they recognise it for what it is. You cannot rock up.
Which is bizarre, isn't it?
You know, in Dubai, in Egypt, you cannot just have, because that's no longer about religion. You pray in the mosque, you pray at home. You know, it's a matter for you. It's not a public display. And once it becomes a public display, once you see that, for me, it veers on a sort of political expression or dominance, and it stops being about religion. And I think we're seeing a creep of that, a faster creep, through the Green Party. I think we're going to see it a lot. And we're seeing it in different towns and villages. And we saw, you know, under the Conservatives, you know, they let madrasas flourish when we knew they were a hotbed of terrorism, but they didn't want to shut it down for community cohesion. And I think we have to, you know, I spoke to someone from Prevent, you know, that we have to recognise Islamism for what it is. It is not just the extreme scale of terrorism. It is a slow creep into our civil community and our civil society and culture.
Sadiq Khan wouldn't recognise any of this, of course. He would say you're talking nonsense.
Well, you know, I'm here as a British person, you know, and I recognise my parents moved here for a British city. You know, I get people who come to London and say I no longer recognise it as a British city, and I think people want British values, British culture. You know, I don't see a flag anywhere, Ian. You know, I want to see all of that.
Do you recognise it as British?
Yeah, of course, because I know what it is intrinsically. You know, I was born and raised here, so, and I know why my parents came here, but I don't think we should be having mass prayers. Like you say, mostly men. It doesn't represent what this country does.
Can you shine some light on that? Why is it all blokes?
Well, women are not meant to pray in front of men.
So that's the thinking?
That's the thinking. So you do have separate rooms in mosques for men and women. So I think that was the thing.
But it's not like all the blokes left and then a load of women came along and did their prayer,
exactly.
Which might have addressed that particular point.
No, exactly. But there's no need for that. You know, there's no need for mass public prayers. That is not what religion's about.
Let's take a call on this. Scott's in Bexley Heath. Scott, morning to you. What would you like to say to Layla?
Morning, Ian. Basically, I echo Layla's comment. For me, I said this before when it first came about, when they were talking about doing this IFTA in central London, was that it was a case of this is just purely performative nonsense. You don't see this stuff in any of the Arab states. You don't see this stuff in places like Malaysia. You don't see this in places like Singapore or Indonesia. It is a uniquely Western Islamic problem where it is just purely performative nonsense. They're doing it for the exact reasons what she's laid out. It is a show of force. It is nothing else. And as far as I'm concerned, as a Christian state, which quite frankly needs to have a very deep inward look at itself, it is actually shameful that this took place in one of our main cities, bang in the centre of a place that is tantamount to our history. So I do find it funny that everyone keeps defending this. And with regards to Sadiq Khan knows exactly what he's doing. People legitimately need to ignore the nonsense when it comes to this guy. He is the textbook definition of taqiyya. This guy is doing everything he does is purely a lie. He'll say one thing to one person and then he'll do the exact opposite to another person. The guy is a fraud. And quite frankly, it needs to be called out more than enough. I'm sick to death of it, personally.
All right. Scott, thank you very much for that point. Layla, there's a lot to respond to there. He's a fraud.
I think he's quite frank, actually, Sadiq Khan, about his intentions. He's not lying. He is pandering to a Muslim vote, right? And that's what you see. But it's the same with Al-Quds March, Ian. For 40 years, Al-Quds was allowed to march on our streets. And that is an indictment on any Home Secretary and any mayor that allowed it. Because Al-Quds is a propaganda machine for the IRGC.
We should say, this didn't just happen this year.
No,
this has happened for years.
And for me, the scandal is not that Shabana Mahmood, prevented them from, marching. It's the fact that it's been going on for 40 years. And basically what we're telling the world, and what we're telling IRGC is we are open for your propaganda. Come and march on our streets. Yeah, you can preach killing us. You can organise terrorist attacks. And you know what? We're fine with it. Come and protest on our streets. And people claim freedom of speech. Freedom of speech does not entail promoting terrorist organisations or theocratic countries that want to destroy the West. Absolutely not. We must be a beacon of Western values.
Absolutely. But so why? I was confused about the Home Secretary because she said, "Look, you can't have this march," and she made a big thing about it. But you can have a static one.
What's the difference?
Thought, well, that's just ridiculous. I mean, they still had a march. They still had the Bob Villain, whatever they're called, shouting their anti-Semitic lines out there. They still had all sorts of anti-Western, anti-British propaganda. I mean, surely the government had the power. Shabana Mahmood had the power to say, sorry, this ain't happening at all.
I mean, our allies are at war with they were carrying Ayatollah Khomeini's photos and glorifying him. And she should have said, absolutely not. And I can guarantee if I'm mayor, it will be run like the capital of the United Kingdom. You come and preach hate in any way, you will not be marching on our streets. I mean, don't forget the farmers were banned from marching on Budget Day.
That's a good point.
When people talk about two-tier policing, that's what they feel. And listen, if you spout some of the stuff they're saying against Muslims on Twitter, you will be arrested. And that's what really annoys people. You can be arrested for a tweet, but you can march on our streets calling for death to the West. And look, brandishing Ayatollah Khomeini, who murders women for not wearing the veil. I'm sorry, if you do not represent... We are a city, the United Kingdom, the capital of it. We must be a city that represents Western values.
So are we too tolerant on this then?
Yeah, because the thing is, I think tolerant is the wrong word. There's tolerance and there's submission. We've effectively submitted.
Yeah.
And I think, and if they say, you can't ban it because of Islamophobia, I actually take offence to that, because Islamophobia, Muslims do not believe in a radical Islamic regime that wants to kill the West. That's not what we represent.
But we've got politicians almost playing to that gallery. Whether it's Zach Polanski, whether it's I don't know. Even Angela Rayner popped her head above the parapet yesterday by saying, she's on manoeuvres, of course. She's looking for a bigger gig and a big comeback. But she's kind of, again, playing to that gallery. How is it that, the Muslim vote in 4% of the UK are Muslims. Most of those people are certainly not Islamists. They're not here to join an Al-Quds march or any of that caper. But that does seem to be a gallery that people like Rayner, Polanski and others happily play to any day of the week.
Well, Ian, what we've seen is and in London, I can speak for London, is refugees have been put at the top of the housing list because they're deemed most in need. And what happens is that they are put in large numbers in certain areas. And you and I know that if immigration is in small numbers, you have to integrate. You know, when my parents came in the 60s, they wanted to, but they had to. When it's in large numbers, they tend to dominate. And so because they're so concentrated in certain parts of the country and certain parts of the city, the people running for that area rely on that block vote, and that's almost gerrymandering. You could say it's gerrymandering. That's why they put them in that area, because they'll always guarantee a vote, and that's why we say, you know, under a reform government, foreigners can't get social housing, but also more importantly, we want to. 15 London councils have declared themselves sanctuaries for refugees. You know, we want it to be a sanctuary for Londoners and veterans.
How did it get to this stage of kind of adopting a form of Islam in this country that, as you alluded to at the beginning, Isabel Oakeshott was with us earlier. She knows the UAE very well, lives in a Muslim country. She says you wouldn't see prayers happening there. I remember years ago there was I can't quite remember what the news story was, but it was somebody in the medical world who was agitating for a law change to appease her kind of Islamic sensitivities, to put it in one way, and there was some, I don't know, the Muslim Council or somebody was backing her up on this. And I took a call from a medic in Lebanon who went, mate, we don't do anything like that over here. Not. What are you doing over there? He said that was outlawed or whatever it was in 1940 or something. You know, it's not something we would do. So why are we importing this kind of almost, it's not even that it's radical necessarily, but, you know, extreme, radical in its worst senses, but fairly extreme versions of a religion.
Well, you know, for instance, I've been told I'm Islamophobic and I'm causing division when I say you need to ban the burqa. The burqa's banned in Tunisia.
Yeah.
You know, it has got nothing to do with religion. And what you talk about, so all those people perhaps don't find a home in the Middle East because they can't do this, and we take them in as refugees. You know, we have to stop taking in people who do not want to embrace our way of life and who do not embrace Western values. And the worst is a lot of them come, and listen, this is no blemish on anyone. I'm not demonising anyone, but we do have people that come to the country with the sole aim of living off welfare and not loving the country, you know, and it's an insult, I think, to British taxpayers when they're expected to work hard, pay for them, and then they turn around and say, you know, we don't want to live like you. And I think we have been run by cowards. You know, we need to stand up and say, you know, this is Great Britain.
We've definitely been run by cowards. And on that point, you say this is Great Britain. We were covering a story earlier, Bishop Kieran Dewar, who joined us, who's written a letter to the King about what he sees as the sidelining of Christianity in this country. In fact, he's saying that he believes that it is a deliberate act to almost dilute Christianity. He's aiming this at the church. He's aiming it at politics, and suggesting that the Christian identity of this country is all but gone.
Well, I mean, you do hear of churches being converted into mosques, right? And so that's why reform has been very clear that will never be allowed under a reform government. And you do have to recognise that it is a Christian Judeo culture, and with that comes a lot of freedom, a lot of tolerance, and we need to embrace it. And listen, my mum came here in the 60s, and I showed her this prayer in Trafalgar Square. I'm like, Mum, do you like that? And she said, no, I didn't move here for that. You know, she said, I moved here for what Great Britain represents. She says, I can, you know, if someone wants to pray, they pray at home. And like he said, that doesn't happen in the Middle East because they recognise it for what it is. It stops being about religion and it starts being about dominance and a show of force.
Let's take a call related to this. Stephen is in Bedfordshire. Morning, Stephen.
Oh, good morning.
You're through to Layla. What would you like to say?
Hello, Layla.
Hi.
Yeah. My problem is I'm from a town called Luton, and half of us have all moved out. We've moved out into the suburbs, you know, and I've seen that town change, you know, beyond recognition, you know. And I fundamentally believe that Islamism is the fundamental problem of this country, which is corroding it, you know, as well as mass immigration. I just want to know what reform? I went to a reform rally yesterday, and it was excellent. It really was. It was in Milton Keynes, and it was packed out. It was brilliant. But I just want to know, what are you going to do about Islamism in this country? We have to put a stop to this. We have to put it like Saudi Arabia and, you know, the Middle Eastern countries. What are you going to do?
Well, I think, as I say, I believe we've been run by cowards who have been too scared to stand up for our culture. You know, we're a host nation, and what we've told people is, come here and impose your way of life and impose your values. And we've almost been told, don't be too British, don't bring your flag up in case you offend the newcomers. And it's got to be the reverse. We've got to stand up for our culture. We've got to see the flag everywhere. We've got to be proud of our history. I speak to so many different schools, by the way, and I can tell you that the 16, 17-year-olds hate our country. You know, they are not proud of our great history, and that does go. You know, I don't know if they're taught in school. I hope not. I hope it is not the source of the teachers. But there is a narrative. I went to speak to a Polcon, which is like a conference of 2,000 A-level kids, and they want illegal migration, unfettered illegal migration. You know, when I said, do you think that a man who arrives on a boat illegally and sexually assaults a girl should have the same access to our country as you and I? They all cheered. And these are the future of our country. And so I think we have to be very, very forceful that we expect assimilation, we expect integration. You know, you go to America, my stepkids are American, if they're watching a football match and the national anthem comes on, automatically they kind of put their hands to their chest.
Yep.
And there's a certain pride in the country there. And we have to have a leader, actually, like Nigel, who is proud of our country. You're not ashamed of it.
Yeah, we don't have that. I mean, I keep banging on about this. There is a clip we played a little earlier of when Trump was over here with Starmer, and they were at Chequers that gave a press conference, and he was asked, you know, Starmer was asked, is the United Kingdom still a Christian country? And he kind of spluttered an answer out, and then very quickly went, but we got loads of other religions as well, almost as if he was terrified to even acknowledge the Christianity base of this country, because there's no fire in the belly of politicians. They're just sort of, they love reading, whether it's Cooper or Reeves or Starmer, they love a pre-prepared press release, nicely clinically written, with all the words neatly in order, nothing from the gut, no instinct.
No, and you know, and you're right, because saying that we all unite under a British culture or a British civic culture, it doesn't mean that we're all the same. And I recognise we are different faiths, different cultures. That's fine, but we have to all unite under one British civic culture and be very proud of it. And that, for me, has not happened over successive governments, and that is a failure of leadership. Also, I think it shows a lack of respect for our country. And I don't think people respect a country that doesn't respect itself.
100%.
You know, doesn't respect its history, doesn't respect its greatness. We are Great Britain, Ian.
Sure.
And this is the capital of Great Britain. You know, we must be proud of it.
I don't even know why that's become controversial.
It's far right, apparently.
Which is a bit bizarre, isn't it?
When you have the Prime Minister at one point, you know, waving your flag is a symbol of hate, we've lost the plot.
Yeah. And that's kind of where we're at. Emily Thornberry started all that, of course, back in the day.
What are you talking about? You know, I will wear I would like to have sweatshirts with our flag on.
Yeah. Maybe we should wear them every day.
I'm happy to.
And nothing more. Are we pausing momentarily here, Christian? We're going to take a quick call before we have a quick break, and then back with more from Layla. This is Laura Jane in Hampshire with a question for Layla Cunningham. Laura Jane, good morning.
Good morning to both of you. Good morning, Layla.
Hi,
I have to declare an interest. I am a Reform voter, and I voted. I moved out of London, Layla, as soon as my youngest got a job. I really couldn't. I just couldn't anymore live there. And the children visit me, so I'm very lucky. I live in Hampshire. What I wanted to ask you was, when you get in to be mayor, what can your powers be over the various councils that are obviously not going to be, keen on the reform policies? I know that as mayor you can ban marches and obviously you can influence the police, etc. But what would your actual practical powers be to bring in more reform type of policies within the various councils in London?
So the councils are autonomous in the policies they can bring, but that's why May 7th is so important that people vote for reform, because, as you said, you know, 15 London boroughs have declared themselves sanctuary boroughs for refugees, and that is a borough decision. And, you know, one of them is Westminster, one of the most expensive real estate. So what you have is a city where, for instance, you raise your children, and when it comes to them buying a house, you tell them, you know what, it's too expensive for you to live here. You've got to move out. There's not enough housing, but you're going to work so hard and pay so many taxes to subsidise people with no connection to London who've just arrived to live in the city that you were born in that you can't afford. That is fundamentally unfair. So one of the things that we have to get going is building. You know, construction. There is a massive, massive supply issue for housing, of course a demand issue, but we can fix the supply issue at a council level. We can remove regulation, we can cut planning, the time it takes to get planning permission, because there are two types of Londoners. You know, there's the asset rich, and there's those that rent. And what's happening is prices have been stagnant since 2008. Rents are going up. You know, prices are going up. Wages are not, and people feel that they're working so hard and not getting anywhere. Yeah. And I think that is at that point where they're like, you know what, I've tried my best. Maybe I'll just let the government take everything, and we don't do everything for me. Sure. But of course, the more the government does, the less it does. Indeed. And so I want people to own a home. I want my kids to own a home and live right next to me. I don't want them to move out. And so that at a council level is what we can do. But also we can change the culture at a council level. I was contacted by a whistleblower in one of the major councils in London who said that the CEO, and it's actually Westminster Council, the CEO, I haven't said this publicly before, the CEO is pushing for a pay grade on the basis of ethnicity before April. I've seen emails where, and I haven't verified them, but you know, I've seen emails from senior officers who have asked for my help, where he has said, I will close the ethnicity pay gap by April. And he said, do not recommend anyone for a pay increase who is white and male. That is a betrayal to everything we believe in.
No, we should say the CEO of Westminster is not here to defend that or respond to that.
No. And listen, I'm just saying what I was saying, and it seems credible, but I do believe this is happening across London.
But I know that the CEO of Westminster is very much into the whole diversity thing in a fairly enthusiastic way. And that may be a good thing, some would see it. But not when you're messing around with it, with unequal pay that you're going to address by creating unequal pay.
But also, Ian, this is my tax money. You know, people have worked hard for that. I want it to go on the best person.
Of course.
I don't want it to go on some arbitrary ethnicity difference, and I want it to go on merit. We have to go back to a merit-based, because what they've done is that they've divided and conquered, right? So they put us all in different brackets, and they've said, you know, pit our needs against each other, and that's wrong.
Yeah. We take a big pause. We're back. Laura Jane, thank you very much indeed for your call. Very thorough answer from Layla Cunningham. If you want to put a question to Layla, whether you speak as somebody from London, where Layla will be Reform UK's mayoral candidate in just shy of 24 months' time, or whether it's a wider issue on reform and the like, lines are open 0344 499 1000.
conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good morning, Ian Collins in for Jezza here on Talk Breakfast. Layla Culling is with us. We're taking more calls to Layla in just a second. Paul says, Paul's in 5. He says, can you ask Layla, what proportion of the Muslim population in London do you think will vote for you and not Mayor Khan?
So there's loads of Muslims like me, you know, who don't vote on religious lines, who don't vote on sectarian lines. They are here to make, you know, they are here to be successful, and they want safe streets. You know, like I said, they have basic needs, and it's not being met by Sadiq Khan. I think it's a minority, but I've got to say this, for the mayoral election, it is only 40% turnout. For the general election, it's 75%. So I speak to so many voters in London who are so apathetic. They're like, you know what, what's the point of voting? Nothing changes. And that's when I talk about the cosy relationship between Labour and Conservatives. Nothing changes no matter who you vote for. So, and the majority of Reform voters have never voted. So we're galvanising those people. So I'm hoping that, you know, the 60% that don't vote, we can get a fraction of them to get up and vote. And then we won't, that demographic that votes along Islamic sectarian votes will not count or will not make a difference to the outcome.
Let's take a call. Michelle is down in London. Michelle, morning to you. What have you got for us?
Ian. Later, I feel quite like honoured to speak to you.
Oh, wow.
Not many people I respect, but you are one of them. You are amazing. But later, when you get in, what are you going to do about the police? Do you think that Reform is going to put some rules down that they are going to have to follow?
You become, of course, essentially the Police and Crime Commissioner of London as mayor.
So the police, so the mayor sets the direction, the budget, and the priorities, more importantly. So we do have 35,000 officers, Ian. I don't see any of them. And I speak to some people at the Met, and they are bogged down in paperwork. You know, they have to take various DEI courses to avoid, you know, toxic masculinity, or I don't know about you, but I quite like a masculine officer. And he created a specialist task force for hate crime. Yeah. And I will set.
If you create one, you'll find it.
Well, exactly that.
It's always that,
right?
Isn't it?
And that is not what the present danger is. Not words on the streets. I want a specialist. You know, knife crime is up by over 70%. We have a rape epidemic, 1 every hour. I want that to solve. And when he talks about a violent crime, rape is not included in that. And I speak to so many women who have been raped and have not gone to a charge. So I want specialist units targeting all of that. I want to flood the streets with police at peak hours. You know, I spoke to teenagers who, like, when we come out of nightclubs, just a few metres away, we're mugged for our watch. You know, they've drunk a bit. You know, we're mugged for our phone. So you need people at hotspots. You need women to feel safe when they go out at night. Women should definitely go to nightclubs, go to bars, and feel safe when they come out. Yeah. You know, you need to see police there. Oxford Street, Westminster has the highest amount of knife crime. Ian, I do not see police in the streets. And I speak to people on Oxford Street, there's no police. Shoplifting is at an all-time high, that it's killing our high streets.
So you would, as mayor, you would make sure that the police were deployed into key areas.
100%.
And I'm pretty sure that Mark Rowley at the moment, the head of the Met, would go, well, we are trying to do that. He doesn't sit there in the police station and go, right, boys, stay where you are, don't bother going out there. He would, the point I'm making is he would say, we are doing something with the deployment we have.
Well, I would just tell him, show us. You know, I don't see visible policing. And, you know, in a city of 9 million, we only have 2 24-hour counters open. They've shut down all the police stations. And what happens is, if you're in a safer neighbourhood team far away from one of the few police stations open, you don't have a touchdown to sit down in, so you have to travel all that way. and then you travel all that back, and that takes you out of your locality.
Of course
So
it does.
I want to see, and we've got so many hollowed out shops on the high street. Why not have pop-up police stations there? That's what I want. So you have a permanent presence.
Yeah.
You know, people can learn how to be a special, which is a great thing to be. I tried to be it. Sadly, you can't if you're political. You know, and I think loads of people would want to do their bit, but also we have amazing officers, and they do not feel that they have the backup from the top.
Sure.
You know, they feel if they're ever accused of racism or excessive force, they're thrown under the bus. And there needs to be respect for the police and they need to have their back. And listen, that you've always got bad apples, of course that, but I don't want the bad apples to taint all of the Met who really have great officers there.
Michelle, thank you very much indeed for that. Here's a message from Neil in Oldham. Can you ask Layla, firstly, why we need to leave the ECHR to be able to deport illegal migrants, but Poland does not have the same problem? Secondly, if we're going to leave the ECHR, are Reform going to produce new legislation before the next general election so we can vote on an informed manner? That's a fair point.
Yeah, so what the ECHR was created about 50 years ago after World War II, and what people fail to realise that it is not thanks to the ECHR that we have human rights. We've always had it. We are exporters of human rights. You know, the Magna Carta, trial by jury, we invented those, and the ECHR was for a time when the Jews were being persecuted, and you know, being a refugee, you had to welcome them. It was never meant to stop sovereign countries from deporting illegal migrants. It's been overused and overinterpreted, and but you also have the Convention of Human Rights, the Refugee Convention, which says that you cannot punish someone for the manner in which they land in your country. Again, in these times, it is no longer fit for purpose.
I'm pretty sure.
I would say that the ECHR is a direct hindrance to the safety of women and girls.
Yeah.
Right. So but he's right about Poland, because we have the Borders Act, which makes it illegal to enter our country illegally. But as soon as you say the word asylum, that crime is neutralised, and we only prosecute 1% of that.
Yeah, you're illegal up until the point you open your mouth and say, I'm claiming asylum.
You know,
then you cease to be illegal.
Exactly. And listen, we cannot have conventions that undermine the safety of our country. If we talk about the IRGC, if you are from the IRGC or the Taliban or the Muslim Brotherhood, you're not going to get a visa. You know, why would you bother? You just rock up on a boat, say the word asylum, and be, you know, put into towns and villages. So it is no longer protecting us, it is undermining our sovereignty. And that's why Reform is really the only party that's serious about getting rid of it, because Nigel recognises that when you have global partnerships, once they start being a detriment to the sovereignty of the country or the safety of the country, and they no longer benefit the country, they've got to go.
I'm pretty sure that if you were there on the day that they were literally signing off the ECHR over half a century ago, and you said to one of those signing their name in their impressive pen or quill or whatever it was, oh, but just a question for you, if 600 people a week float across the channel in a rubber boat and try to get into the UK, would this new ECHR thing protect them? They'd have all gone, no, it's not for that.
It's not for that.
But somehow over the years it's morphed into being a kind of one-size-fits-all policy or framework for all manner of issues that it was never intended to be.
And London houses the largest amount of, I think the second largest amount of asylum seekers in hotels and refugees. It's become a sanctuary city, and listen, it's affecting everything. I was a senior Crown prosecutor in London, and I prosecuted a lot of people that arrived on a boat. And some of the excuses or some of the defence in mitigation that the public prosecutor says, you know, he's just arrived on a boat, it's quite traumatic, and he can't work because he's illegal, so he has to commit crime. And so you have seen a rise in different types of crime in the city, and it's got to go.
Here's a question from Richard in Nottingham. Richard, morning to you.
Morning. I hope you're both okay.
All good.
Fine, thanks. Hi, Richard.
Fire away.
Yeah, just a quick. So, Leia, you're speaking a good game about the UK and Christianity and one thing or other. Will you be attending the Unite the Kingdom March in May?
I hadn't planned on it, no.
But isn't that quintessentially
Is it compulsory?
What you've just been talking about? No, it's not compulsory at all. But it's quintessentially what she's just been talking about. It's the unity of this country and the flag and everything else. It's everything she's just been talking about, but she's not willing to go to the march.
Is there a problem, Richard?
I'm unconvinced about reform, and I need convincing.
I tell you what, Richard.
If she'd have turned around and immediately said, I will be there, that would have convinced me.
Yeah, but Richard, I've spoken to a lot of politicians who agree with the sentiment of Unite the Kingdom. They're not best pleased with some of the speakers. That doesn't mean all of the speakers, but some of the speakers. So they will distance themselves from that. That's not a wholly unnatural position to take as a politician. That doesn't mean you don't agree. Look, I've done more phone-ins on this than I can care to remember. And people have gone, look, it was like going to a kind of coronation party. It was brilliant. People were in deck chairs having ice cream. Kids were there. But there were some people on the stage that might be a little bit unpalatable for some people. So politicians tend not to attend not just that event, but other events. Not all politicians, but you'll find that some will, Richard. Isn't that just the way it is?
But when you have a let's say call it a demonstration march, whichever you want to call it, that's as big as that, there are going to be elements of it on the stage that you may not necessarily agree with.
But you might not want to go to something that Tommy Robinson has organised. That might just be your only criteria. You might say, look, Tommy Robinson has made some good points, but I don't agree with his whole, with his backstory. I don't think he can move away from that. No, I'm not making that as a point myself, but many people would, and for them, not unreasonably.
No, just because Stephen Yatsen has organised it doesn't mean to say that it's unpalatable.
Well, it's kind of sort of slightly intrinsic within it. If you're not comfortable with him, you're not going to want to go to a rally that he's organised.
On what grounds?
Well, that's for an individual to decide, isn't it? If somebody believes that this man doesn't speak their language and all the usual things you've heard about him, some of which will be true, some of it will be made up. I get all of that. I understand. I'm not advocating this position, Richard. I'm just trying to put myself in the boots of a politician who might say, I just don't want to be part of that.
Well, it might be nice if Layla answered, but just a quick question.
Well, I was putting the wider point to you. I mean, Layla will make her own mind up.
Hold on. But all political parties have policies, lots of policies.
Yeah.
Now, I may not necessarily agree with all those policies. That doesn't mean to say I'm not going to go to a reform conference.
There's a difference between believing in policies and certain individuals that you don't believe have historically been a force for good.
Well, if you can give me an example of where he's been a force for bad, then maybe I can concede. But most of the time, when you've got the state that's against you, you show me the man.
I don't think the state have a position on that, to be honest. I know he and others will argue they do. Layla, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's not a binary choice. It's not, you either believe in it or you attend the march. And I think that puts people in a difficult predicament. I've been very clear about what I believe in, and if people interpret me not attending the march as not believing in them, then that's up to you. I've been very vocal about my beliefs. I haven't shied away from them. But I will not be attending that march. There's many marches I don't attend that I believe in.
I mean, I was just going to say, Richard, Ben Habib went last time, as I'm sure you'll know. Rupert Lowe didn't go. I mean, does that make Rupert Lowe not a patriot?
No, but Rupert Lowe's not going for mayor, and Reform look like, chances are they're probably going to, well, depending on how it goes in 29, we'll see, but looks like they might be in power. So what I want to know is, do you support the sentiment of Unite the Kingdom? When you look at the amount of people that turned up last time and how many people watched it on telly as well, you've got to admit that's a sizable portion of the population.
Yeah, of course I support the sentiment.
It's an interesting dilemma, this one. I think it's a great question from Richard,
yeah,
by
of course.
the way.
Listen, Richard, of course I support the sentiment. I was on TV after the last one, fully supporting it. The people who attended were called far-right and fascist, and that's fundamentally wrong. I know exactly why people, most of the good British people are marching there. They're marching because they are sick and tired of being treated as second-class citizens in their country. They're sick and tired of being told that if you wave the flag, it's a sign of hate. They're sick and tired of being put to the back of the queue while people who've just arrived haven't. And listen, I think in some parts of the country, in London, they're sick and tired of their culture being eroded by other culture, mainly Islamic cultures. And I understand exactly why they're marching, and I believe it. But just because I believe it, it doesn't mean that I'm going to join the march. And I, you know, I've met loads of people on that march who are great people, and I agree with exactly what they're saying. It's what Reform's fighting for.
On that point, Richard, great call. Thank you, mate, for that. 0344 499 1000. Thank you to Layla as well.
Thank you.
We've hit the clock. You've been brilliant, by the way.
Thank you very
You
much.
are back. When are you back?
I'm not sure if it's next week or the week after.
2 weeks' time.
2
weeks' time.
Yeah.
I understand. Yeah, brilliant. Good to see you,
Thank
Layla
you.
Cunningham. Mayoral candidate for London for Reform UK. On that issue of diversity, Christianity, which we were talking about a little earlier, here's a voice note. Comes from Justin.
Just listening to the show. Justin from Gloucester. But the thing is, as Christians and Catholics, we've been pommelled and pommelled and pommelled by MPs and lefties that we are so in the wrong and we have to give in to all these other religions, to give in to Muslims, you know, to give in to all kinds of racism, that we are such bad people that we can't do anything right. And we've become such a woke country that you've got Keir Starmer won't put people to war because he knows we haven't got the army to do it no more because we're so woke, you know. And that's the problem we've got, is we have given in to other cultures. Would we be allowed to go to India or Pakistan and all that and preach Christianity and be on the streets and you know, and do Christianity and everything without being shouted down and told it's not allowed to be done? No, but this country we've given in.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 12 minutes to 10 o'clock. Julia is here, of course, after the news at 10. This has been Ian Collins in for Jezza for this Wednesday. He's off for the day. And, of course, more comment from you on the way as well. We are also going to just touch on this story. Removal vans spotted outside Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's new Sandringham home. The lorries were spotted outside Marsh Farm this morning as the former prince relocates from another house on the estate. So he moved, a temporary house, he's moving again. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer is set to ignore Labour calls to delay the King's US visit, with plans in the works for an even bigger trip. The PM is under pressure to delay the royal tour amid the Iran war, with Donald Trump's attacks on Sakir raising fears it could leave Charles and Camilla embarrassed on the world stage. There's only one person to sort this one out for us. Angela Levin, the royal biographer, is with us. Morning to you, Angela.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. So the removal vans are in. So this is the final move, the final bit of the jigsaw puzzle, the final part of the demise of the former prince.
Yeah, that's right. They had waited a bit and they put up vast sort of protection around the house, because just in case, anyone wants to come in and try and move things around, politely say.
Yeah. What were they taking? I mean, bearing in mind,
they were taking paintings and valuable things. The things apparently he's had lots of art in his previous home, and he wants all that taken through. So the lorries that are taking him are actually the ones that the royals actually use, because they're very reliable. They don't break anything. Yeah. And
that would be a story, wouldn't it?
Yes, and so that's what he's going on. So I wonder who's paying. It must be King Charles, who's paying for that as well. So he's doing that. He hopes to get in early April, but everything has to be done. They've done the carpets, they've done the painting, they've done everything. So he'll go in there. But actually, there's a big difference. Instead of him just looking after things himself, he had to check through that his teddy bears have arrived. If he's got 72 teddies, and he loves them, and they've all got to come over.
He's a grown man. What's wrong with the bloke?
I think there's quite a few things wrong with the bloke.
Well, that's very true, yes. So his teddy collection will be protected by these diligent removal
and they have to be in absolutely the right place. And each member of staff who has to do this, put it on the bed, they all have to do it in the right space. They've got a map. Have you ever heard of anything so silly?
A teddy bear map?
A map where the teddy bears go.
Wow.
So this bigger one goes that side of the bed, the other one goes this side. I mean, it's very strange indeed.
Yeah. Does he hug the teddy bears? That's another...
I didn't ask.
Who knows? Give me a huggy-wuggy little Jeffrey, maybe. Yeah. Who knows? This house he's moving into, I mean, it's not a bed sit, is it? I mean, it might not be like the other place.
It's got 5 bedrooms.
Yep.
And it's quite smart. But nobody had been using it for quite a while, so they had to clean it up and repair things. But the one he's at the moment is much smaller, so that's not good enough for him. So it's going into this one.
Will he have staff still?
Oh, that's interesting. He had loads of staff. He's never cooked anything for himself, but the king brought it down, so he's had only 3, a chef and 2 people looking after things. But now I think it's only 1, and he has to get his food himself from Waitrose, and that's the difference. I mean, it's sort of awful but ridiculous, isn't it?
Well, it is. But then when you've got a teddy bear's picnic to organise, I mean, you need to make sure you've got your food. You need to make sure you've got your food in store.
Yeah,
that's going to be when somebody says make a sandwich, Andrew. I mean, if he doesn't know how to make a sandwich, I mean, this is a big lifestyle change. I mean, he must be bored senseless. I have no sympathy for this, by the way. But he can't do anything. He can't leave the house. All he can do is go for a horse ride.
He's very sad. No, King Charles has stopped him doing a horse ride.
Oh, yeah, so he can't ride his horse?
He can't ride his horse because he doesn't want people to see him. He doesn't want them to stop and talk to them. He's absolutely sort of locked up, really. And that's going to go on for quite a while. And the whole area is actually sealed for anyone to go in, look at the place. I mean, he must be very miserable because his daughters aren't going to see him. His ex-wife, who was there for him just to keep him company for a long time. She's not there either. And so he's there on his own. And perhaps he will think about what he's done.
But these...
He doesn't feel it's his fault.
No,
he doesn't feel he's done anything.
Well,
He'll
he's
never say,
perpetual denial, Angela, isn't it?
Yes, he's in perpetual denial. And he just keeps saying, I don't know. Or he can't remember, those sort of terrible sort of things that make you feel...
I know. But, these people do, despite what's gone on and despite the accusations against him, those in the kind of upper echelons of society do still retain some friends, don't they? I mean, I'd imagine he could still cobble together a dinner party guest list.
I don't know about that, because I don't think Waitrose would actually produce anything for that. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But he's got lots of people who are friendly and not in this country who have known him for a very long time. And one of them invited him to a sort of stay and live in a huge sort of palace that he's got. And he could have, swimming pool, all this sort of thing.
So he can... Can he not do? He can't accept those invitations.
Well, no, he can't at the moment because there's war. That's the thing.
Well, of course, yes, because most of them are in that neck of are in that neck of the woods, I guess. So it's going to be a bit of a very much a different kind of life for this man now.
I think it will be a very hard life unless he goes out of this country. But I believe they're not going to let him because they don't know what he's going to do, and then he'll probably find other women and other things he wants to do. It's rather crude of me to say that. But...
Well, no, I'm sure he'll find what you'd call a workaround in that sense for all manner of issues. Who knows? Listen, Angela, great to have you on with us. Thank you. Angela Levin, royal biographer on Prince Andrew. What an extraordinary story. Does that put him in a... I mean, you're in a kind of perpetual lockdown, aren't you? There's nothing you can do, nowhere you can go. This is Talk.
The Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royal tea from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the Royal Tea from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Good morning. Welcome to the home of common sense. Debbie says Sadiq is praying in the street with a bunch of men. Shows how diversity really is his strength. There's not a woman in sight in that prayer loving. Wayne says regarding Khan and the big prayer event, we should organise a similar event over the coming Easter period for Christians. Someone with a big public profile and online presence needs to get this moving forward. And if Khan or the Met disallow it, it will confirm all of our suspicions. Let's speak to Sister Hartley Brewer, who may be the person to get on her knees.
I'm not big on
You
prayer
could get on your knees, you couldn't get up again. That's the trouble.
It's one of those things. Nick Timothy's message about that,
yes,
or his tweet about that was like, a lot of people are too polite to say it. I'm trying to work out why it does make me feel uncomfortable, but it does. It doesn't feel right. And it's very different because there's this meal, but there was this mass prayer event again, separating men and women, not happy with that in any religion, by the way. But